Coming up on today's episode, John B. Goodenough finally gets his Nobel Prize, Dyson shuts down their electric car program, and Tim interviews the guy that some people are calling the next Elon Musk. Let's get ludicrous. Hey there, and welcome to Our Ludicrous Future. This is the podcast where we talk about all the cool future stuff that's happening today that's going to make tomorrow the future that is ludicrous, that is ours. I'm
Ludicrously.
I'm Joe Scott with the Answers with Joe YouTube channel, and with me, only with me, is Ben Sullins.
Hey guys, it's Ben Sullins from the Teslanomics on the interwebs. How is everyone doing here?
Oh, I'm good.
I mean you. Yeah.
I assume you're just talking to me.
That is right. I am just talking to you, and except the other voices in my head.
So Tim is out just doing some traveling for some stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's very cagey. He didn't really tell us.
You know, that guy, he's a elusive one. You know, you got to follow him on the Twitters, I think, is the only way to keep up with him. Does he Instagram still? Is that like a thing he does?
Not like he used to. I mean, that's kind of where he got his start, was doing that sort of art project with the flight suit.
Yeah.
But I don't think he really does that so much anymore. He's all in on the YouTube now. But I mean, he still posts on Instagram just like everybody does. Instagram's
a weird thing. I feel like it's fallen off recently. Like they changed the algorithm thing where it's not just the latest stuff all the time. And so you'll go in and it'll be the same photo you saw hours ago is still like the only one showing on top.
I noticed that recently.
So you're kind of like, okay, I guess there's nothing to see here. Right?
Nothing new has happened in the world.
That's how it feels, for sure. But I guess in one sense then like I only post one photo each week when I do a video, and it's like a photo, like some kind of related photo that wasn't whatever, and I say go watch the video. That's the only thing I use Instagram for. But I've noticed like I'll pop it open sometimes and I'll get a ton of likes on an old photo from like weeks ago. I'm like, what happened? So it must be the algorithm, like kind of how YouTube does it, where, I think I just got like Marquez's, 15th birthday party video on YouTube or something recommended to me, that kind of a thing. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, when it's just like suddenly surged out of nowhere.
Yeah, literally MKBHD 5 update or something.
Yeah, Instagram. For the longest time, basically all I was posting on there were like the thumbnails to my videos, just kind of be like, hey guys, video came out today. But anybody who's following me and knows me from my channel probably knows that it's Monday, Joe has a video out, it's,
Right.
And besides, it was just getting repetitive and boring, so I stopped doing that. It's just kind of a dumpster fire right now. It's like if I do anything interesting, I'll take a picture and I'll post it, or if I'm outside and there's a pretty flower, I'll post it. So it's literally, it's the most random thing in the world, But the thing about Instagram that I find interesting though is I get a lot of engagement from it. Like I'll post some whatever picture and I'll get a whole lot of likes and comments and stuff, considering I have a pretty small following on there. Mm-hmm. So then I start thinking, oh, maybe I should actually like start putting some effort into this and engage or something. But then it's just like, I got too much already on my plate,
What's the thing? Every platform I think wants like to do its thing its way. And so unless you do it the way it wants you to do it, I found it just doesn't work. Me on my Instagram, it's just pictures of Teslas. That's all it is. Sometimes I have something else, but generally it's just pictures of Teslas. And it works. People love it. I'll get like 1,000 likes on a photo or something. And it's like, wow, it's pretty good engagement, like you're saying.
But see, that's pretty simple for you though, because if you have it focused on one little niche or one category, you can just kind of post that same thing over and over, and it's not the same thing, but you get the point.
Right.
Like that's what people go there for.
And it's funny because literally I can just take a picture of my car on a different street, and it's like, whoa. It's like the exact same photo I posted for like 7 days in a row, but it's just like a different setting, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, it's a different photo. Like this is cool,
Yeah.
I
should put more effort into trying to like categorize and streamline my content on Instagram, but it's really just like, we went to a concert, so I took some clips from the concert. It's really more like a personal blog kind of thing. I don't know.
I have thought like because of what you're saying. Like, I think it's you have to do it, otherwise you just give up, right? Like there are people that are great at Instagram, and then on YouTube they're terrible.
Yeah.
Like there's very few people that are good everywhere, right? Like if you look, generally somebody has like one massive following somewhere, and then everywhere else is like a tenth of that or something.
Yeah.
So I have been thinking about giving up on it, just saying like scrapping the whole thing, kind of like Sir James Dyson is doing to his electric car.
That's not even a bad segue. That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Well, it's easy when I get to set up my own story for it, right?
Well, let's make sure and give credit to Tom Visar. I'm probably pronouncing your name wrong. Sorry, buddy. And actually, he's in Discord right now. But he shared that with us, this with us this morning.
Breaking
and it literally
news.
just happened. This is breaking news, so go for it.
All right. So Sir James Dyson, yes, the guy that makes wheelbarrows and vacuums and hair dryers and fans.
Is he related to Sir Elton John?
Because they both
it
have
doesn't work
Sir
that way.
in it.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like when you go to France and it's like you're on, I'm on Rue, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, just look for Rue. Like, that's just how you say street. That's just like,
Yeah.
like you go to Latin America, it's like, I'm on Calle, whatever. Anyways, yeah, so Sir James Dyson and their company, best known for the vacuum cleaners, which I own multiple of, and they are fantastic. They are scrapping their electric car program. And Joe, you did a video on this, didn't you?
I did, and yeah, actually, I guess Tom is one of two people who informed me about this, because I got a tweet this morning that was kind of like, "Hey, didn't you do a video about this?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the deal? Do you recall any of that information?
It's been a while.
So long ago.
I know. Well, the thing that's interesting, and I guess we can get into this here in a second because there's a little bit about that in this article that you have up. They were working on some proprietary battery technology, like some new solid-state battery kind of thing, and they had a deal with a company out of Michigan, I want to say. And I can't pronounce their name because it was unpronounceable. If it was right in front of me, I wouldn't be able to pronounce it. But no, they were working on what they thought was going to be some revolutionary battery technology. They had something about windshields that was going to use their airflow technology that they sort of perfected with the vacuum cleaners and the air dryers and stuff like that. But anyway, it was going to be like a winds. God, I can't talk. The wipers would have just been an air blade, basically, that
cool.
keeps your windshield clean.
That would have looked wild. Imagine like rain's just falling, but it never hits your windshield.
Yeah. Well, see,
Just like,
and where I got confused was like, wouldn't that just create a spray?
Yeah,
wouldn't that just create a
everyone else
mist
is
in front of
blind,
you that you wouldn't
but
be
you're
able to
good.
see? Yeah.
Oh, man. So, yeah, so he sent an email to employees. Apparently, there were 523 people in this division, 500 of whom were in the United Kingdom. They have made immense achievements. There's just some quotes here. You know, he said that we've tried very hard throughout the development process. We simply can no longer see a way to make it commercially viable.
Yep, that's the key word right there.
I like that he's thinking from a business standpoint here and not just being like, this is cool, let's do it. And everyone's like, the finance seems like, but. And it's like VC money, you know, like how San Francisco basically works. Like,
Yeah.
We'll make money in 50 years. We don't know. The Dyson Automotive team has developed a fantastic car. They have been ingenious in their approach while remaining faithful to our philosophies. As an employee, you know, guy that worked in corporate America for a long time, I just hate this kind of CEO talk here.
Yeah.
You're like, then why the hell are you scrapping the program? What are you doing? Like, it's so great. You guys are all fantastic, but you failed. Like, what?
Right.
Oh man. So they were trying to find they're trying to find alternative roles for the people. So it's very smart of him, right? You've already invested in these folks, like find a different thing. And then as you mentioned, Joe, they have a quote here about the battery will benefit Dyson in a profound way and take us in new exciting new directions. So basically he's saying that, you know, all is not lost, that they learned a lot, they did a lot of things. The car isn't going to be a thing though. And that they'll take some of that tech and they'll apply it elsewhere, which I don't know what else. What else is there? So maybe an air conditioner next. Like, and everything seems to be related to moving air somewhere.
Yeah. Well,
which is kind of a funny thing.
They kind of cornered that technology, I guess. But yeah, 2.5 billion they put into this thing, and I don't know how much of that was actually spent, but
2.5 billion euros, or would it be pounds?
Those are pounds, yeah.
Yeah, so even more. Yeah, so that's kind of a bummer. I was actually really hoping this because Dyson seemed to be a good, like, I look at him as a real engineer inventor type, and versus Bezos is like a business guy. So I was kind of excited about that. But yeah, it's kind of a bummer. Hopefully, maybe they'll do what I think Tesla should also do, is kind of scrap the whole idea of making cars and competing in that space, because it's such a difficult space to be in, and just make awesome batteries for other car companies. Like maybe make the Jaguar I-Pace get 600 miles of range or something. That would be incredible.
Well, I would like Tesla to keep making the cars.
Well, this is my whole theory on Teslas. Like, will they become like Qualcomm? And for those those people listening that are above maybe 30, you remember Qualcomm actually made cell phones at one point in time, and now you may just the only bell that may ring is the Snapdragon processor or whatever. So Qualcomm makes parts for like almost every single cell phone in the world. Like literally, like probably something like 80+% of phones in the world have Qualcomm bits in them.
Right.
But nobody really, they're not like a name brand that you're, unless you live in San Diego where I do. But Tesla I could see a company coming in like that, almost like Panasonic or LG Chem, who make batteries for everything, but are kind of unknown, really. So I could see. I mean, I wonder if that's where they're going to go with this battery tech. Maybe they did something cool, and they're just like, you know what, cars are tough. Screw it. Let's just make batteries and sell that to someone else.
Well, it's interesting. I would like to know more about it, because I mean, when they say it's not commercially viable, there's a couple of questions I have. One is, did they just kind of look at the electric car landscape and see how everything's turning and just kind of be like, you know what, by the time we get this up and at any kind of volume, game's over, or it's already too late, or we can't justify getting any headway in the market, as not just the newer guys like Tesla and Rivian and those guys, but I mean as GM and Volkswagen and all of them are kind of doubling down on the electric thing. Like, do they just not have a place in that market anymore? I mean, maybe that's what it came down to. So that's got me curious. Another is just like, I mean, maybe they did corner some new battery tech, or maybe they just couldn't quite justify how they could put this car together in a way that would be economically feasible, to get the cost down to where anybody could really afford it. Because I think that was another thing about them, was they wanted to make it in the $25,000 to $30,000 range. Like they were trying to get something like that. I could be wrong about that. I mean, nothing Dyson makes is cheap. So
right.
I had my doubts about that from the beginning, but now I'm curious what those economic realities were that smacked him in the face and kind of put the kibosh on all this. Yeah,
that's a good point. Was it a product market fit, meaning you're going to come out with a car that basically is inferior to the current products on the market, so no one's going to buy it? Or is it just the economics of making the thing itself? Because they had a factory in Singapore is where they were going to make them. So it was going to be like R&D, testing, whatever in the UK, and then manufacturing in Singapore where they could do it more cheaply, I suppose. Which seems odd, because I believe Singapore is not like a cheap place to make things, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
Yeah.
It's a small place, so...
A channel called Curious Elephant, I think he covered the economics of he kind of broke down the decision to do it at Singapore, and I don't remember what his points were. It's been a while, but it made more sense when you broke it down than.
Yeah, he does a lot of great videos. Shout out to Curious Elephant.
Yeah, he does.
I like a lot of that stuff. So that's a bummer. Less competition in the EV space. I do, and I'm planning on foreshadowing for asking what we're working on. I am working on thinking about doing a Rivian video. And did you know that they actually were originally going to make a sedan and all this stuff? That they're from the beginning, it wasn't even called Rivian, but from the beginning it wasn't we're going to make trucks. But I couldn't find any real details. I would love to ask RJ, the CEO, about this pivot. But at some point they pivoted. My guess is they saw Tesla like just dominating this space and being like, yeah, forget it. Like, we're just not gonna like, why don't like you're saying, why don't we find a market segment that is not being served to where we don't have competition really, and go there instead of like, hey, let's try to compete with these guys who already have so much momentum that our chances are much lower. It's a good business strategy, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and going back to what you said earlier, you said that you were happy that Dyson is approaching it from an economic standpoint, not just like going crazy and trying. Honestly, I was that was one of the things that gave me hope.
Oh, really?
Them, was that they were kind of somebody that was like, let's just try something brand new with all electric. Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna stop that. But he seemed like a mad inventor type that might actually be able to do something really cool, and maybe like shake things up a little bit. And so it is kind of a bummer to me. I would have liked to have seen. And they said that somewhere in that article that there's like 2 working models that they did build. I'd love to see it.
Yeah,
we never saw any designs other than that, like,
the
patent
sketch,
schematic that you had there.
Yeah, that is the funny thing about it. I mean, and their culture. I think Dyson's success is, from what I understand and know about them, is built on the culture of kind of innovation and everything, and how they really try to encourage everybody to share ideas and to be an inventor.
Right. Yeah.
Which I think is a great strategy. Really kind of harnessing the creative power of all your people. Because when it comes down to it, like, somebody just turning a wrench is not as valuable as somebody that's using their brain juice at a company in a company like that makes things. So
yeah. Did you see? Yeah. I'm assuming you did, but Galley's video yesterday about his trip to the Gigafactory.
No, I haven't. I have a backlog, so I'm about 70% done with your Andy Weir interview. And then I have to watch the Engineering Explained Tesla Economics one, of course.
You can get it to play.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's like, will not play. I don't know what the deal is. But I love Jason Fenske. I love everything he does over at Engineering Explained. I love all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it mostly because it makes me seem smarter than I actually am. Like the whole
I feel like the engineering has been explained to me.
Yes. The whole Ford electric pickup truck towing 1 million pounds.
Oh, yeah.
And when he did the math on it, he's like, really? It's like towing 1,800 pounds because the rolling resistance of a steel wheel on a steel track is like, a fraction of what it would be if it were like on pavement or something.
Almost nothing.
Yeah. So I showed my dad that. My dad's a big truck guy. He's dying to get his hands on an electric truck, but they just don't exist yet. And I was like, did you know Ford's doing this? And he's like, well, I hate Ford, but I would totally buy that if I could. Ford is one of those companies. People love them or hate them. I don't.
I remember as a kid, they said Ford stood for found on road dead.
Right.
Or
and then the counter argument was, well, because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, anyway, no. Going back to Galley's video, he was basically saying the same thing you were just talking about with Dyson, that there's this culture of like everybody gets to innovate, and like any new idea to shave just seconds off of the production of any part is taken into consideration. And anyway, he talked a little bit about that I think he was actually talking about Fremont at that point in the video, but he had done a Gigafactory tour and was talking about all that. But yeah, there were a couple of specific parts that he was talking about that like were a little bit challenging, and they figured out with Groman, the automation company that they bought, like how to literally shave seconds off of the making of that part, and that increased their productivity by blah blah blah, and it's just that like constantly trying to find some new and better way of doing that. And then of course there's the exciting part of as they get Giga 3 going over in Shanghai, like they've already learned all this stuff, and they're just gonna like start at the right out of the gate with those kinds of thought processes and innovations and stuff.
And that's something that I don't know how much of this is true. I tried to corroborate this and find other evidence of this, but W. Edwards Deming is a very brilliant kind of business, or was, he's passed away now, a business thought leader, I guess. And I hate that term, but that's kind of what he is. He's a guy that really like sat down and thought about how you design a business to function well. And he's credited largely with going to Japan after World War II and helping rebuild their automotive industry.
Yeah, okay.
And I believe one of the awards in Japan that companies can get is the W. Edwards Deming Innovation Award. And so this guy is like prolific, right? He's not super well known here in the U.S., but I've studied his stuff for a long time, read all his books. Really, really brilliant. And one of the things that those guys talk about, and this is where I haven't seen evidence of this, I would love to, but they said that in Japan at Honda or somebody, Toyota, when there is a strike, unlike the strike going on at GM right now where like 50,000 people are not working, which is mind-blowing, but when there's a strike over there, people still come into work and they still do their thing, but they wear a black armband, which is a signal that I am no longer trying to improve this process.
I've heard
like
that, yeah.
like a strike is I'm just doing my job. I'm like, God, like that is amazing if that's true and that's your culture. Like yeah, screw it. I'm gonna stop making things better. I'm just gonna do what you paid me to do. Like that's so not how things work here, right?
Yeah, the entire country is on strike all the time.
Right.
If that's the case.
Right. So I love that idea. And yeah, I mean, I think that is what. Like that is like the secret sauce in a lot of ways of a company like Tesla, and they have to do it because without it, GM, Ford, everyone else is just going to crush you, like in Amazon. Amazon's uses, this is why they're a great business, but not like an innovative company. I don't think is because they can use their money and their weight to just crush industries and take them over.
Yeah,
and that's totally legal, totally legit. That's the capitalistic system we have here. So it's cool to see, I mean, I guess I'm saying like Tesla needs to do that. Otherwise you won't survive, Yeah. Speaking of not surviving, is that bad? That's a bad one. Sorry guys. Speaking of batteries and the need for batteries, there's a lot of people in California without power right now.
Oh, there you go.
You weren't sure.
No, you lost me on that one. The first one was better.
Okay, so it's all downhill from here. PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, and San Diego Gas and Electric, where I live, has shut off the power to something like over 1 million people, and it's growing. I think the total estimated people that they're going to shut power off intentionally for is something like 2.5 million people. And this is a problem. Here's the deal, is that the history behind this, PG&E, SCG&E in California, back in 2007, I believe it was, we had these tremendous, like insane amount of wildfires, like just tremendous damage. People died. Like hundreds of millions of dollars of property damage. Someone fact check me. A lot is the point. And they were sued, and then they lost. That they were negligent in their maintenance of the equipment in these rural areas. And so wind comes in this time of year in San Diego or California, to where it's really hot, it's really dry, and wind comes in and it causes a power line to go down, and boom, huge, massive wildfire, kills people, causes whatever, right? So their response is, cool, we're just going to shut off power to those areas, so that way we can't be sued. I mean,
so this is a preemptive strike to prevent the same wildfires that you guys saw last year.
Well, I mean, I think 2007 was the spark that started it. But yeah, basically every year has been a terrible year for wildfires since I've lived here.
It's like a yearly thing.
Yeah, and this is the time of year, and it's super common. I mean, it's not even it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, that happened over there. Like, I remember I used to work from home and having to get off a conference call because the hill outside of my house was on fire. Like, it's nuts how I remember driving down the freeway and there was a wall of flames on the freeway. The entire freeway. So what had happened was, it was a canyon, and there's a lot of canyons here in San Diego, and the fire had come through and knocked down some brush and some trees and stuff to where it actually blanketed the entire 5-lane highway. And we had to turn around and get off the freeway and go like the opposite way. And there were cops everywhere. It was like a whole crazy ordeal. And there's like, this was right by UCSD. There's houses everywhere. Like this is not like some rural crazy area. I mean, I was 10 minutes from the beach. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? This was like in the heart of a town. So this is their response is, hey, let's just shut off power everywhere. So that way we can't be the cause of it. These things are still going to happen. But of course the problem with this, and I heard a really, sad story this morning about it, where this was in Sausalito, which if you're unfamiliar with California, that's just north of the Golden Gate Bridge. So if you're in San Francisco and you go north across the bridge, you're in Sausalito. Beautiful, gorgeous area. This is like Napa Valley area. And there were people from the city of Marin, that's Marin County there. There was a woman and her 8-year-old had to sleep in their car because they didn't have electricity for heat or anything like that. And then like all the food in their fridge is going to go bad.
Right.
And now they had to like go buy, I mean, this is like, it's wild. Like it's terrible. This is like, people are going to die from this, This is not. So the answer, I guess, is what? Batteries, right? However, with this many people, we're just not even close to being there. There is a related bit to Tesla here in that, in fact, Tesla superchargers are without power in these areas. So, Elon is tweeting online about Tesla supercharger stations in the regions affected. Are going to have Tesla power packs within the next few weeks. They're going to add solar. This was always the goal. This was always the plan, was to have those things be totally off the grid. Mm-hmm. But this is crazy, man. And I hope we get it resolved because this is going to hurt people. And I don't know. I mean, where I live, we're not affected, and we have the power walls at home anyways. Mm-hmm. But this is the thing. Like maybe if you live in an area now. And then when I did that video about power walls, I said, yeah, you don't really have to worry about it because there's not power outages. And then, if you live in like Florida or somewhere there's hurricanes, you kind of expect them to be. This is nuts if they continue this.
So let me make sure I'm understanding correctly. The reason they're shutting off power is to prevent some faulty equipment from causing wildfires. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the general idea.
And it's basically a CYA move on their part to keep from getting sued for wildfires in the future or something.
Right. They would probably say it's to prevent a wildfire and save those, that property and those people. Mm-hmm. But the more cynical, let's just be honest here. It's all about money. The more real answer is they don't want to get sued again. Mm-hmm. That's my opinion. Yeah.
So this has nothing to do with there being a lack of power there's not enough power to go around. It's not that kind of thing.
No, not at all.
Because usually when you hear about like rolling blackouts and stuff, it's because there's just not enough power to go around. They have to kind of ration it, and it's usually in some country that's not here, but
right.
Now it's here.
Yeah, let me see.
But that's not the case though. That's what's confusing me is when I heard that there were going to be some power outages, like planned power outages. I thought it was because, well, there's just not enough energy to go around and it's really hot right now or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's not it at all. I think I have a map here as well that I think we can show. Yeah, so you can see kind of where it is here. Yeah, so see a lot of it, if you're just listening, a lot of the there's a Google map here. We'll put a link to this. It's in kind of the more rural areas, right? The eastern, near the forests and those kind of things, like Yosemite. But then some of these, like this is, there's some kind of surrounding San Francisco where, if you look, this one down here, this is right by San Jose.
It's San Jose.
Yeah, you were just up there, right, doing your interview and stuff. Like literally in this area, this is like Cupertino. This is where Apple is, right? There are like millions of people here. This is not a rural, crazy, far out, oh, nobody lives there area. So this is crazy, man. This is really, really nuts. And
I'm still going to be able to watch Apple TV, right?
Right. And on
Apple TV Plus Max, whatever.
And on Apple TV, you might be able to watch Netflix and hear about Bill Gates' company that would have a way to solve this. Actually, I guess they wouldn't.
No, see, that's okay. That's where I'm getting confused here. Is like, this is really about updating old equipment to prevent meltdowns and stuff, right?
Well, not meltdown in the literal sense of that word, but yeah, it's to prevent,
not like a nuclear meltdown,
right.
But
It's basically, so you have an old power line, and maybe there's trees growing near it or on it, and 50-mile winds comes by and knock the transformer off and create this big spark, and that catches the canyon on fire, kind of a thing. And then 5 hours later, that's 30,000 acres or something burning, and it's like, oh crap, what do we do? By the way, there's 15 other fires going at the same time. So shit, where do you, how do you prioritize?
Yeah. Okay, so here's what I don't understand. I'm sorry, I'm clearly very confused on this. Eventually they're going to turn the power back on. They're just turning the power out for a number of hours, right?
Several days. They don't.
Are you being serious?
Yeah.
Several days?
Yes.
Oh.
That's why it's such a big deal. If it were like just an afternoon, it's one thing. But it's driven by the weather reports. So the weather, NOAA or whoever reports these things is saying, hey, you're going to have what we call a red flag warning for fires in these areas. And so that's what they're basing it on. Is what the weather. And so, we can't predict the weather beyond like a day or two. So it's really bad. And that's where you're like, it could be today, they could turn it back on, or it could be 3 days from now. Could you imagine? Millions of people, without power. This is like medical equipment isn't going to function. Like imagine kidney dialysis machines for people at home. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? It's a real problem, man. Now,
wow.
I think the deal is that they could. So in the counter argument I've heard is that in order to inspect all of these, the cost is like billions of dollars, because these power lines are super old and there's so many of them and they're so spread out. They're in remote areas. My answer to that is, DJI makes a $500 drone, dude, and you can operate it with a cell phone. I can get teenagers and just go fly these things, and you could inspect 10 times as many for probably cheaper than it currently costs to inspect one.
Yeah. Kind of crowdsource the data collection on that.
I don't think it's you could literally have the actual inspectors, like the people that know what they're looking at, back in an office somewhere, or maybe a team of people, and you have like 50, 100 people out there just flying drones around, sending footage back. Like, I think there are answers here. But the response I've heard from the power outages, the power companies was always like, oh, it costs so much money, we've got to pass that on to the consumer. And because of how that works, they can't just like raise rates. There's like laws and stuff about how much you can charge. I don't know, man.
What a mess.
Yeah.
It would be great if we did have a decentralized grid where everybody had solar panels in their house and a little power pack and everything. And I feel like ultimately that's the way we gotta start looking. But you made the point earlier, like there's just not enough battery packs to go around right now. Like sometimes I'm gung-ho about that kind of technology, and I support it, and I want to see more of it and all that, but sometimes you do get slapped in the face with the cold stake of reality that it's just not there yet.
Yeah, that was the whole TerraPower thing, right? Is when you look at the energy needs of the planet, yes, in an ideal world, you would have renewable energy that just gets stored in batteries. But we are nowhere near the ability to produce that amount of battery storage yet.
Yeah.
And so you have to have some other kind of answer. And nuclear is like the most attractive one, right?
Yeah. So, we can jump into that. We talked about this just a second before we hopped on the air, but yeah, so there's this it's called Inside Bill's Brain. I'll spit it out eventually. The Netflix series. It's 3 episodes. They're like an hour each. And it's basically looking at Bill Gates. It's looking at some of the different things that he's worked on, from like malaria to what's the other one? Oh, just diarrhea.
Well, it's
like more
sanitation.
Like more people die in third world countries from diarrhea than like anything else in the world.
It's crazy. It's like, yeah, a lot of people.
And he just like found that somewhere and was like, I want to do something about that. So he, started this competition of ways to create sanitary toilets that would work in those conditions and blah, 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 blah. But anyway, so like each episode kind of focuses on a different thing that he worked on, malaria being one of them, diarrhea was one, but one was TerraPower. It was this new advanced nuclear energy concept, which I had covered in a video a long time ago, but yeah, you brought it up. What did you want to talk about?
Well, I think from those of us that follow Elon closely, he did, I think it was the original Powerwall presentation where he talked about, I think he showed a picture of the US and he said, okay, this many pixels would be needed of solar panels to power the entire country. And this many pixels would be how much battery storage we need. And it was like 1 pixel to power the entire United States. So I think like with him saying stuff like that, it seems like we have the answer. Why just go do it? Mm-hmm. But I think the reality is, and I think the if I recall correctly, the example Bill Gates used in the documentary was something like Hong Kong, with the typhoon that comes in and power is out for the entire city for 4 days. Like there is just no amount of it's impossible really for us to create enough battery storage, specific batteries to power that.
Yeah.
I did think, have you ever looked into water as a battery? Have you heard about this?
Is this the gravity thing?
Yeah, right. So where you build, and so like when you need energy, you just open up the valve like a dam, like like a hydropower kind of thing, but you intentionally just put the water there for the reason of generating energy.
I've not looked really into it, but there's ideas like that, and there's ideas of like just giant concrete slabs that get kind of raised up during the day while electricity is being generated, and then at night it falls down, and that turns generators and creates energy. It's interesting. I've also heard ideas of like just using our current water system. Like there's pumps that drive water to all of our houses right now, and there's pressure behind it. And why not just like let that turn some little generators and power some electricity? Of course, that adds to the friction, and I haven't looked into that, but I've heard people talking about it.
I think you're right, though. I think the ultimate answer, well, see, again, the world is a big place, and there are the landscape and the architecture and how we've evolved is so vastly diverse. You can't really say, like, here's the silver bullet. Obviously, otherwise we'd have already done that thing.
Right.
But I really do love the idea for the people in California or people in the United States or really anywhere that has the capability to be decentralized and to be off-grid as much as possible. So that way, you don't have a massive single point of failure, right? Like for our house right now, literally SDG&E could shut off power and we wouldn't really even notice at all, unless the sun didn't shine for 2 days. Then we would be kind of screwed. But other than that, and so there's something awesome about that feeling. But yeah, it's not everywhere will that work, right? But I love the idea if we can get there of decentralizing these things, because that's a much more resilient system than the current one.
Well, and was it California that somebody passed a law saying that all new homes have to be built with either solar panels and or some kind of battery backup?
Yeah, I don't know about the battery stuff, but solar is the thing here. Certain, and I don't know if it's all, but it's a certain amount of it needs. So, like if you build an apartment building, to say that it all needs to be 100% solar is kind of too much, right? But you need to say that there's like X amount that needs to be powered by it. So, that's a new thing, and so and I'm not a huge fan of laws and regulating, like forcing people to do things like that. I would rather incentivize people to do it, right? I would say, hey, look, we're going to give you, a tax break or something like that to do
pull
this.
Instead of push.
I just, it's the vinegar and the honey kind of a thing, which one would you attract more people with, or, more ants, whatever. So, but, all of this is made possible by lithium-ion batteries, which were all made possible by a few folks that just received a little award, apparently.
A little award.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a little.
Is this a picture
Nobel
of it? Because
Prize
this
thing.
is not a very good-looking award, if that's the award.
They didn't put a lot of effort into designing the Nobel Prize. No, yeah. So this was, somebody informed me in Patreon, and I'm sorry I don't. You know what? Maybe I should look it up. Yeah, I'll look it up later. Somebody in my Patreon informed me of this, and thank you, person whose name I don't have in front of me. I'm sorry. But yeah, so they announced the chemistry Nobel Prize in chemistry. Yeah. And it went to the people who created the lithium-ion battery.
Woohoo!
Which kind of makes sense. I mean, it's starting to kind of take over our lives, or make our way of life possible anyway, with the devices and whatnot. But yeah, it's a $900,000 prize, and it's split between three scientists: Stanley Winningham of the State University of New York in Binghamton.
Sure.
Binghamton. Whatever. John B. Goodenough of the University of Texas in Austin, and Akira Yoshino of Asahi Kasei, I think I'm saying that right, Corporation in Tokyo. So, I mean, it was not a one-person deal that just came up with this. It was, innovations over time. But I'm happy to see John B. Goodenough get himself a Nobel Prize, because that guy is a legend, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, and he recently had a breakthrough as well that people are really hopeful for, that would change things going forward again, right?
Yeah. He's working on a solid state battery with somebody else, and I can't remember her name, but down there in Austin. But dude's 96 years old. I think 95, 96 years old or something like that. And he's still working, and he's still like innovating on this technology that he helped create, 30 years ago. Probably has more energy than I do.
Yeah.
Like, he's one of these people that's like, I want to be that cool when I'm that age. And I'm like, I'm not that cool now. Like,
yeah, it's only, you got to work up from here. You haven't peaked yet. Not
yet. Maybe in my 80s I'll get there. But I mean, just a little bit that's in this article here. This is from Science Mag, by the way. So yeah, it was originally created in the 70s. Whittingham was the first one to realize the potential. He sets up this layered structure with lithium ions in 1976, and he demonstrated a 2.5 volt battery. And Goodenough iterated on that in the 80s when he was working at the University of Oxford. And one of the big problems was, one of the big issues of making lithium ion work was these sort of stalactites that would be created in there, that would like wind up shorting out the battery. And anyway, so he says like he made up of a metal oxide instead of metal sulfide, and it kept the battery from expanding and contracting when it took out the ions. Anyway, he was able to expand that to a 4-volt battery, so which is twice as powerful as the original one. And then the researchers in Japan took it from there and went for. So no, he's 97. Goodenough is 97.
Wow.
He's the oldest ever recipient of a Nobel Prize.
Man, that's amazing.
It says, asked during a press conference in London about his return to his lab in Texas, he said, "I hope they will still keep me employed."
Oh man, what a legend!
Yeah,
what a just absolute legend, man.
Yeah.
How amazing! I mean, I don't think people appreciate. It's one of those things, right? Like good design, you should never notice it. It shouldn't be obvious.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things like these batteries have so dramatically transformed our world. We can't even fathom it. I mean, laptops run on these batteries. People don't realize that. Like the battery in your laptop is the from a chemistry standpoint relatively similar or relatively the same as the one in a Tesla. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. The one in your cell phone, the one in your camera, the one in everything you use that is rechargeable, for overwhelming majority of are based on this chemistry. So it's amazing. Mm-hmm. What they've done and what that's going to mean. It's already how it's already changed the world. Now, is a Nobel Prize in chemistry one of the official Nobel Prizes? Because there's a couple, like, is it economics is one that is not, it wasn't an original category, but they've kind of adopted it later, kind of a thing.
I know there's economics, physics, chemistry.
Or is it literature or something that's not an official one? It was like, because when Alfred Nobel created the thing, there were like categories for him, and then later they're like, well, we should add this one too. And now, down the road, it's going to be like, Nobel Prize in YouTube or something.
I'm working toward that. Obviously, the Peace Prize. I don't know. I mean, we could look it up, but you know where that came from, though, where Alfred Nobel, like, why he created the Peace Prize. No,
go. It was Go tell the story.
He invented TNT.
Oh, right.
And that he invented TNT, and that wound up going into, of course, weapons and blowing people to shreds. And he felt guilty about that, so he donated his life's earnings to this prize to reward people who advanced humanity, and he wanted to make sure that a prize for peace was in there. So, I
mean, how much guilt do you have to?
I think that's a pretty common thing throughout history, is people who create some type of weapon thinking this will end all wars because it's just too awful. People wouldn't fight each other anymore. And then, oh no, it just made everything worse, and now people are dying more than ever.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to make a prize or something to undo this,
Like Einstein or something like that.
I know Oppenheimer struggled with that. I think of the Winchesters, the Winchester Mystery House. Sarah Winchester, like she well, this gets a little bit into crazy town, but she thought that she was being haunted by the spirits of all the people that had been killed by Winchester guns, and so she.
Wow.
Do you not know this story?
No, that's amazing.
So
especially with like the whole gun control thing, it's like that sounds like you hear about that story more.
I wish when I was in San Jose I could have gone to the Winchester Mystery House. I've always wanted to go there, but like she started building it. Like, she basically built onto this mansion that she had inherited, like, her entire life. And there are, like, all these, like, stairs that lead into walls and doors that open into other walls and like, weird secret passages and stuff. So basically she was trying to confuse all the spirits to keep them from getting her, I guess. So she, like, kept building and building on this house, and it's apparently just the most bananas, crazy... And, of course, some people think it's haunted and stuff, but... yeah.
Wow.
But that's why she did it. But I mean, this was also during the spiritualism movement in the 10s and 20s, and she probably was told by somebody that she was being haunted by the spirits of people that were, killed by Winchester guns and stuff. But no, it's an interesting house, and I really wish I could have had time to go when I was out there. That's
like, have you ever been to Hearst Castle?
Mm-mm.
Do you know of that, William? Is it
William Randolph Hearst?
Yeah. Which apparently Hearst Media is still a thing. It's still totally, and it's funny. He was like the inventor of clickbait. Yellow journalism was, yellow journalism was spouting out like sensational headlines with zero proof or evidence of it.
Yeah.
Clickbait. It was like that dude was clickbait before clickbait was a thing. Like,
well, and that's where, like, sometimes when I get all down about like where the media is now and with the internet and everything, and you can't trust what you read, you never really could. You know?
Exactly.
In certain sectors, anyway.
Well, and then you go back to, I mean, this is a rabbit hole we can stop on, but the Alien and Sedition Act in the United States and the early founding of it, where if you did publish something that that was basically, if you wrote anything bad about the government, you were going to jail, right?
It was considered treason, I believe. That was John Adams.
Yeah. And then this is where Alexander Hamilton's thing about having an affair came out. And then, it's wild. Like this, yes, media is, I would say, more accessible and like proliferated, like spread across the world at a pace we've never seen. But the concept that people lie about stuff in order to advance their own causes is kind of innate to human history. Like, you can probably go back to cave people being like, and someone else be like, wait, the lion didn't go do that. What are you talking? That's not. There was no mastodon. What is this? And it's like, oh no, trust me, bro. It was there. It was there. I killed it. I'm the king now.
There's a headline on a cave wall that reads, "This lion approached a mastodon. What happened next will blow your mind."
Yeah.
In caveman speak. They translate it, and that's what it says.
Exactly. You're like, wow, clickbait it's just who we are, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and whoever controls this starts to sound kind of crazy, but like whoever controls the media controls the narrative and controls what people think. And there were always, like, William Randolph Hearst was a perfect example. I mean, Citizen Kane was based off of him, somebody that basically accrued too much power and was able to use that for his own needs and stuff.
It was him versus Pulitzer, right? Because
I don't know.
I thought that was there was I kind of want to, see, I don't do videos like this, but I would love to do a video explaining this because there's such a rich history of this. Like, I believe it was Hearst and Pulitzer was like, no, journalism must be, like, real. And he's like, I'm selling papers though, Yeah. It's like, so they had like these
fat stacks, yo.
Right. I think they called it the circulation wars. I remember I just went down a rabbit hole and I was like, this is fascinating. This is like the browser wars with, Bill Gates and those guys.
Right,
There's so many, like, history repeating itself. But before we get off the woo-woo topic, there is something that I wanted to talk about here. And that was that the Navy has confirmed existence of unidentified flying objects seen in leaked footage. So, Joe, did you actually do a video on this, or?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, but I did a video, I don't know, I'd have to look. It was probably toward the end of last year that was like the 5 most compelling UFO videos ever or something like that.
Uh-huh. And this was one of them?
And
this
it featured, there were a couple
right?
of them that were from Navy pilots that were recording stuff like this. And this has been coming out, and it's in the news a lot lately, and I've had a lot of people reaching out. It's like, what do you think about the fact that the Navy confirmed this? And I'm really confused because I thought they confirmed it a long time ago. Like, when I put it up on my video, I thought, well, yeah, it was already, yeah. I mean, it was leaked footage, but they didn't, let me put it this way. They didn't come out and say, yes, this is real, but they didn't say it wasn't real either. They used that kind of middle speak that was like, well, it came from a Navy camera, but which to everybody else means, oh, okay, it's real. But anyway, I mean, these are interesting videos. The specific ones that they're talking about here, I think, is what they call the Tic Tac. The Tic Tac spaceships. And they call it that because it looks like a little Tic Tac. It's just like a little white, almost Zeppelin-looking thing. And they apparently have these little antennas on the front and back that kind of point towards each other. And they spin.
I didn't catch that.
I don't know if that's exactly what they think they've captured in these videos, but that's one that has shown up in other videos here and there.
So I'm a kind of religious watcher of Joe Rogan, and he just had the pilot that was apparently flying this, I think it was a Super Hornet, he said. And he was the one, and so his crewmate was the one that was taking these. They have this camera here. So we'll play the little video. If you guys haven't seen this, it's not like the best video, I would say. But apparently this is from him. They're flying in a, fighter jet, we'll call it. And they're flipping through the different modes of the camera to try to figure out what this thing is. And they were sent there. They were doing a training mission for something else. And then the radar operators or whoever told them, hey, go check this thing out that's over there. We're not quite sure what it is. And so they went out there, and then this is what they got. And so they had 2 of the aircraft of them, the fighter jets, the U.S. Navy. From different angles, 4 people in total seeing this thing, this footage being actually released, and then the Navy confirming that this was legit footage. Now the question, so the whole UFO aliens type of thing, I think there's still a gap there. The Navy confirmed that this is real and that this is a UFO, we'll call it, but not the UFO in the sense of like, right, it's an unidentified, right. They call it an aerial phenomenon.
Right.
So the fact that like this is a thing that is real, that we have footage of from people that are not the woo-woos, saying I was abducted and they told me I'm now the universal friend or whatever. This isn't the children of God kind of thing. This is like a legit, guy from the Navy that's, as credible as they can possibly be, saying that this is what he saw, here's the evidence. We don't know. Mm-hmm. That to me, I think is pretty profound. I think it's, and the thing in the footage that he explained in the Joe Rogan piece, which if you guys are into this, you have to go listen to it, was that it didn't have an exhaust plume and that the speed at which it traveled is nothing like he's ever seen. And at the time he was flying in one of the like most advanced aircraft we've ever made as humans. And just the way he described it, I was like, dude, this is something. Like, this is the most compelling, like him talking about it, and then this footage is like, there's something there, I feel. I don't, the little green men, take me to your leader, whatever, that, I think there's still a stretch there. It's not like we have evidence of any of that. Like, so this clearly just could be another government with some tech that we've not seen, or our own government. Like, there's so many still open-ended things. Mm-hmm. But I was kind of blown away, man.
Was this the one that was over Puerto Rico?
No, this one was right here in San Diego, actually, in Ensenada.
Oh, okay.
So it was
there was one in Puerto Rico too, I want to say.
Yeah, so they were flying. He said the premise of how they got this footage was they were getting ready to go to the Persian Gulf, and they were flying these training missions, and they were between here and Ensenada. So here being San Diego and Ensenada, which is only about a 2-hour drive. And they were something like 60 or 70 miles off the coast. He said that these guys have been seeing this for a long time, and they were up there. They didn't go to check these out. They were doing a training mission. They didn't even have weapons on the planes because you don't usually do a training mission with live munitions. And while he was up there, he got a call from whoever and said, "Hey, go check this out. We don't know what it is." And his response was like, "You're sending me to go check out a thing you don't know what it is, and I don't even have any guns or anything here. What do you like, guys? I'm not sure." And they're like, "I don't know. Yeah, go check it out. It'll be cool." Yeah. And he said, there were no men in black that came and talked to him. It was more of a joke. Like, he basically just got shit from all of his crewmates. All like, oh yeah, you see any green men up there? They're just teasing him about it. So I don't know, man. I mean, what do you think, Joe? Is this a real thing? Like, is this woo-woo or not? Like that's where...
Alarm activated? No?
Yeah. Did Joe Rogan get me, or what is it, man?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. But like, I kind of walk this line where, and I might dance on this line a little bit around Halloween. I'm thinking about doing sort of a ghost video kind of thing. But look, I used to be like super into UFOs and Bigfoot and ghosts and all that stuff, and there's so much that we don't know about and everything. And as I've covered more of these kinds of things over time, I've gotten more and more, I guess, skeptical and cynical about it. Like, the burden of proof for aliens is so high, Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that they couldn't be out there. Of course, maybe. The whole thing of like, see, I'm struggling even talking about this. I see that footage and I am as fascinated by it as anybody else. I really am. And it's interesting, and I don't have an answer, but that's fun to me. That's interesting. Right. And I mean, it's either alien technology, which is fascinating, or it's like some kind of human technology that has been done out there by someone, which is even more fascinating. My God, give me that.
Right. Right.
So it's super interesting. I'm just not the type of person that's going to immediately go to there's aliens and lizard people and they're controlling us and this whole thing is a lie or whatever. I'm just not wired for that.
Right.
So if we had like an arrival situation where a giant ship just like appeared over a crowded city area,
Yeah.
and we could all see it with cameras and stuff, then okay, yeah, obviously I will believe what I'm seeing there.
Right.
And it's not that I don't believe what I'm seeing here. It's just it's grainy footage. There's like 200 pixels there, and it's moving around, and who knows, you know?
Yeah,
but it's interesting. It's super interesting. I'm not trying to downplay it. Yeah,
so it's Commander David Fravor is the guy, the pilot that saw it, and he was on Joe Rogan with Jeremy Corbell, who did the Bob Lazar Netflix thing, which I personally was not a fan of, really.
Really?
Because I had never... So if you guys aren't familiar, Bob Lazar is a guy that, worked at Area 51, that kind of a thing. I get asked about him a lot, too. Yeah, and but I never knew Bob Lazar's story, right? I didn't grow up seeing him, say this on the news from George Knapp in the 80s or whatever. This wasn't, a time when I was aware of such things. So to me, like I watched the documentary about Bob Lazar on Netflix, and I was like, I feel like I didn't get it. I'm like, wait, like what's his story? And then he came on Joe Rogan, and I'm like, oh, got it. Like he actually told his story, and like that to me was still very like, he seems credible. He seems not crazy, and wow. But that you're talking like 30 something years ago. There's not really any evidence. You're like, I could see how you could just basically still dismiss Bob Lazar's story. And he doesn't care if you dismiss it. He's like, whatever. Like I just told, I told my story again. I'm done. Like he doesn't really want to deal with it. This being like from 2014, I think was when the footage was shot. 2017, the U.S. Navy is confirming it from a guy. Like to me, this is like, whoa, there's something here. Again, I think I'm with you though. Like, what is it? We don't know. But the fact that there's something, I think is fascinating.
Well, if they had just freaking stormed Area 51 like they said they would, we might have an answer to this.
Did they not? I thought they did.
There was basically like some people showed up and they threw a party. That's all it was. I saw some footage, and even like some of the guards at the gate were just kind of like having fun with them. It was.
It would have been hilarious if they dressed up as aliens.
No, some did. Some had costumes on. It was like
I mean the guards.
Oh.
You go up, you're like, oh, it's real. Like
you're going to have to turn around.
I love it, man.
Please return.
I love the idea, because it's when you look at the amount of stars in the sky and the number of planets and all this, like it's a crazy scenario if we are the only intelligent life out there. But then the whole Drake's equation. So the Fermi Paradox you've talked about, the Drake's equation you've talked about. If you guys aren't familiar with either of those, go look them up, because I think both of those actually explain why it is sort of likely that we haven't discovered any alien life, right? Like the whole Drake's thing blew my mind. I'm like, yeah, in order for us both to exist at the same time is really what it is.
Yeah.
Right? That's really the hard part. It's
there's the distance scales and the time scales.
Yeah.
Both of them are kind of not in our favor.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, so it's a thing where it's like, okay, even if intelligent life did exist, there's still 500 other hurdles you have to get through in order for us to both be alive and communicating. And when you look at like how many times already humans have almost completely destroyed our own species, the likelihood that other people haven't done that as well is like, okay, like, the chances actually are a lot smaller than I think people maybe think about.
And then there's the rare earth hypothesis, the idea that we just live on a really, really, really phenomenally weird planet. Between the effects of having an outsized moon that's way bigger than we should have, just the specific combination of elements here on the planet working out the way they did, the fact that our sun is a specific type of star, the fact that we're in a specific part of the galaxy that's not so filled with radiation and whatnot. I mean, it just keeps on going. The list just keeps growing.
Yeah, when you look at it, it's pretty magical.
Like, if we do have aliens visiting us from somewhere else, the only way that's possible is if they have beaten light speed, if they can warp drive from one part of the galaxy to another or something like that. And somebody that's that advanced, you can ask a lot of questions about that. You can say, why would they even bother coming here if they have that level of advancement? But then you can say, But if we had that technology and we found an Earth-like planet that could harbor life, hell yeah, we'd go there and check it out, you know?
Yeah, the thing that was interesting, Neil deGrasse Tyson says it, and Sarah Sagan says it as well. I don't know if she's related to Carl Sagan, I would imagine. But on an episode of Explained, they were talking about this, and it's the same analogy, like we may just be too stupid, you know? And her analogy was, if you get an infestation of ants in your house, right? It happens, right? Sometime you'll get ants in your house. You don't think, let's talk to the ants and explain to them why they should leave your house. You just kill the ants and get rid of them. Like it doesn't even like pop, like it never is a thought like, let me talk to this thing. And so aliens may see us that way, as we are we can't even comprehend or try to communicate with them because we don't have the facilities for it. So,
well, it's kind of like I brought this up with the idea of super intelligent AI. Like, we can't communicate with chimpanzees, and they're like 99.99999 whatever percent the same DNA that we have.
Right.
And they're the second most, well, arguably the second most intelligent creature behind us, and we can't communicate with them outside of like just rudimentary stuff.
Right.
So an alien species from a completely different environment, from a completely different culture or whatever, how would you even communicate with them? Like, how would you even... Anyway,
exactly.
There's so many interesting trails you can go down with this whole topic, and I think that's why I'm as interested in it as anybody, but I still remain skeptical when I see stuff like that. It's just like the burden of proof is just so high.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is where the internet probably doesn't help, right? Because people are going to take that and run with it and go down, and it's just like, oh man, like it'd be cool if we could all have an open mind and just be like, I don't know, let's try to figure that out more and be...
That's what I try to be. I try to not let my skepticism get too heavy, you know? But yeah. So, Tim has a whole interview that he did with somebody, and we're like going pretty long into this podcast, and I think we need to cut to that, don't we?
Yeah. So Tim,
we're going to bump Tim off.
Tim interviewed, his name is escaping me.
Joe Barnard,
who was on Austin Evans' channel recently, or was it Linus Tech Tips? I forget. Austin Evans?
It was Austin Evans.
Evans did it.
I still have it pulled up on my browser.
Yeah. I thought it was Linus Tech Tips. I don't. White guys talking about tech. They're all the same. I don't know. I can't keep them straight. So Austin did a piece on him, called him the next Elon Musk. And he's the guy that is attempting, I didn't see, has he done it yet? Propulsively land a model rocket?
I'm not sure if he's done it yet either, but he's basically building model rockets that land themselves just like a Falcon 9 does.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's Tim talking to Joe Barnard about that.
Hey guys, sorry, I am going to be going out of town. There's a NASA/SpaceX press conference being held at Hawthorne headquarters, so I had to fly out to that, so I'll be gone Thursday, so I was unable to record. But this week, I thought I would introduce, you guys have been asking for interviews with a couple key people, and one of the biggest ones is this gentleman right here, and this is Joe Barnard. Joe, welcome.
Thanks for having me, man.
Dude, okay, so full disclosure, we've been friends now for like a year and a half. I don't think people realize that.
Yeah, every now and then you and I will both get tagged in a tweet that's like, oh man, you guys gotta like talk to each other.
You need to meet this. Yeah, like exactly. It's like, no, we've known each other since early 2018. You came out.
Yeah, no, so we...
Yeah.
I came out for your... it's actually in the gallery here, but I came out for the... Spacing Out with the Everyday Astronaut series that you did a while back.
Yes, you did.
And there's a photo of, I think if you scroll up a little bit, there's a photo of us where you're right next to the Falcon Heavy model. But this is back in the OG Everyday Astronaut with the orange suit. These are like the old days.
This was when. There we go. Look at that. And that also helps put into scale how freaking big your rockets are. So let's introduce what you do and why I have you here and why I'm I might be one of your biggest fans, actually. I literally
Thanks, man.
might be your #1 fan. I am just in love with everything you do. Okay, so let me tee this up a little bit. What you're looking, if you're watching this on YouTube, then you're looking at a picture of me standing next to a Falcon Heavy model rocket. No big deal, except that it's huge. It's about 1 meter tall. But let me tell you why this is so extra special. You may notice that his rockets, when you look through his gallery on his website at bps.space, you'll notice his rockets are missing a pretty important part of most model rockets, and that is the fins. And I don't know if you guys know much about model rockets, but normally a model rocket, because they're so small and everything, they just have fins for stability. They put them down in the back so that the rocket goes straight and not into your eyeball. And Joe's rockets are strangely missing fins. Joe, you've got some explaining to do here, my friend.
Yeah, I got some explaining to do.
Explain it up.
Yeah, so I don't know where to start with this. There's a lot of information on this online already, but basically the way the real rockets that are going to space, that are putting things in orbit work, is they use thrust vector control and a couple other systems that are usually not aerodynamic to steer the rocket into space, right? Because you've talked about this a lot on your channel, but you're not just going up, you're going sideways. So you've got to be like right down a corridor to get there. Anyway, I think that stuff is super cool. And a couple of years ago, I was like, man, I wonder if I could do this on a model. Most model rockets use fins, and it was kind of a personnel challenge to be like, I'd have to write a lot of software, I'd have to try to 3D print a lot of things, and I have no idea how to do any of this. So just start pounding the pavement.
And that's the thing. Okay, that's the part that blows my mind. And that I don't think a lot of people, even that watch your channel now, I don't know if they would understand or know that you're kind of like me in the sense, like 5 years ago, I knew nothing about rockets. Yeah, actually, you were doing videography as well. And
yeah, and we both came from wedding videos.
From wedding videos and wedding photography. And you're a musician. This is kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'm starting to see a pretty strong correlation here. So
it's October, so it has to be spooky now.
we're secretly twins. No, but then you took all this, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm just gonna teach myself how to code. Not only teach myself how to code, teach myself how to 3D print and model, and not only do all that, but then like physically build circuit boards and everything you just started doing from scratch only a couple years ago, right? Like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Fall of 2015. So we're at, what is that, like 4 years now?
Coming up on
That's
4
crazy.
years.
That's kind of like horrifying.
but
the other thing, just so I don't,
all this stuff in such a short period of time, man, you're nuts.
Just so I don't like toot my own horn too much. Like it all happened very slowly too. It's not like, there's a lot of like, screaming at the computer that doesn't get shown on the YouTube channel, but like that's the reality of a lot of it. Is just like there's a lot of mistakes behind getting there. But yeah, it's I'm all self-taught. I had this music degree, and I don't know, the story I tell is like it's the truth, but the story is like I saw what SpaceX was doing. I knew I had to get a job with them, or I knew I had to at least work in the aerospace industry. And so without a degree in, actually, I've got it right here. Hold on. I had a music degree.
There you go. That helps a lot with rockets.
Right. And so how do you get the attention of a company without a proper degree? You do a cool project and show them that you can, that you're serious. And I don't know. I still don't have a job with them, and that's actually not the point anymore. But
that was the point at the beginning, right? Was you did want to work for SpaceX or another, or in the aerospace industry.
Like it absolutely was SpaceX. It's easier to be like, oh, I really wanted to work in aerospace, but come on, you want to work at SpaceX,
right? And you had you didn't really have what it took to be qualified in any real position there.
I actually thought about applying without any qualifications. And that was maybe the peak of my ego, because I kind of thought like, maybe that would work. But man, nuh-uh. There's no way that would have worked.
But that's what's so inspirational, though. And that's what I love about this generation of people with access to information. And this is, I think, a totally broader topic, like worldwide, like education aspects, is that people without any formal education in something can now learn. They can access the internet for free, teach themselves how to model, 3D print, write code, build software, do all these things literally in a span of 4 years, and make model rockets that you're able to land themselves with solid rocket propulsion. Unbelievable. I mean, there's a reason I'm your like biggest fan. What you're doing is unbelievable. I mean, and
Thanks,
okay,
man.
so if you guys aren't subscribed to Joe on YouTube, you really, I recommend no channel more than Joe's, because not only is it informational, you're going to learn a lot about gimbaling and how even the testing, he runs you through all the testing procedures, even things like, it's basically like watching someone play Kerbal in real life. Like he had this, I remember
Kerbal,
one time,
but it's more expensive. That's what it is.
more expensive and a little slower. But that's the beauty of it. Like one of my favorite episodes is when you're trying to figure out how to make the fairing open up more reliably. And the idea that you had to put those little notches in so that it could like crack open easier. Like fun little engineering things like that has made your channel so, and not only that, because you're a videographer, because you're a songwriter and a musician, the videos are of unbelievable quality. I have to say your latest video, I'm sorry to be sitting here just tooting your horn for an hour.
It's cool, man. I don't mind.
But for real though, the last video, he put out a video about, it was called the Thump Tube. and you went way over the top, I think, in production, and you had me hooked, dude.
Dude, that's my new favorite thing now. So I've got another one that's hopefully coming out later this week, which means it'll be out early next week. But
I know how it goes.
Yeah, and that's kind of my new thing. I'll just make it like an open secret. I'm kind of trying the Mark Rober like formula for videos, where it's like you don't have to upload super often, but just make them really high quality.
Yeah,
and it's way more satisfying too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mean, maybe this is just an ego thing, but like I've watched my own video maybe 20 times now, just because I like it, and usually that doesn't happen. So.
Yes.
I'm stoked about it. Anyway, thanks for all the kind words, man.
But okay, so on that, because here's what we're gonna do, everyone that's listening and or watching. What we're gonna do is I want to just kind of talk with Joe, because I feel like there's tons of information out there. Like if you want to see his backstory, you can find that all over the place. Just look up BPS, or watch his channel. Prod around there. We could do 2 hours trying to talk about your backstory. But the thing that I don't think a lot of people would be able to do with you is just literally talk about kind of the current state of space, the current state of, NASA, SpaceX, Blue Origin, India, the Roscosmos, like everybody right now. There's a lot going on, a lot of really exciting things. I want to talk to you about what you're excited about, and just kind of get a sense for things that, because normally your channel, and like we were just talking about, like, you don't really want to branch too far out from your lane. You carve your niche or your niche, however you want to say it. And
I never know.
Yeah, I never know. And people then might scream at you if you went off and started just talking about normal rockets or something. So I want to give you that chance, because you obviously are a space fan.
Yes.
So let's start off. I want to hear your thoughts about the development of Starship and then kind of the things leading up to last weekend's Starship event and stuff. Like, what are your thoughts going on? What are you looking forward to? What's a red flag for you? What are you super excited about? Just give me your rundown. Starship.
Yeah, man. The first thing I'll say is that I build model rockets. So like I have some very, very small amount of experience in aerospace, but it's mostly just model rockets. So like all of this stuff comes with a grain of salt, and like I don't know what I'm talking about half the time. Here's the thing. Okay, if you want to jump off with Starship, it's just I kind of like how do I put this? Like, I'm kind of glad that I'm not driving down there like you to film these events. Just be like, they're very cool, but I'm also like pretty nervous about it. There's just that it's mostly an aesthetic thing. It's like the stainless steel looks so different than any other vehicle. It's just like there's not really a sensible thing. It just is like very, I don't know. I feel like Scott Manley actually has a pretty good take on it, which just like, I'm just going to keep watching and be like, wow, okay, they can do this. I'm not trying to be a skeptic. It just is really surprising that it seems to be working. I hope it keeps working. I'm waiting to see if the orbit in 6 months thing pans out. At this point, it would be orbit in less than 6 months. I don't know. I don't want to sound like a hater, but I am. Well, because I'm not, but I'm a little skeptical of some of the timeline, but I'm also really excited. Like, these are things that need to happen anyway. The Starship needs to happen.
Yes.
Insanely large vehicles like Starship, even stuff like New Glenn, like these rockets need to happen. but it's and I actually think there's value in over-promising and under-delivering on timeline. Like, it's good to get people excited about this stuff, even if you're not always going to deliver on it. I think there's some value to that.
For sure. I think that's okay. I do need to point out, though, two things. Number one, believe it or not, I was watching before I had the opportunity to talk to Elon. I did my homework to make sure, and I watched all of the old IACs. I watched Falcon Heavy press event, like anything like that, just to kind of get a sense for like what he's been saying this whole time. And Falcon Heavy, he said, we're hoping to do some hops basically next year, so 2019, and then in 2020 do some high altitude flight tests. At this point, they're ahead of schedule. We laughed at him when we said, yeah, right, you're not going to be doing hop tests in a year, and you're not going to be doing high altitude flight tests of a full up Starship in 2020. That seemed insane, you know? And of course, the cheapest and easiest way to do that is to just have this big old hunk of stainless steel, you know, shoddily, not that shoddily, but kind of shoddily welded together in a field.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think anyone looking at it is like, yeah, they've obviously got a clean room, and they're like really, they are taking the fastest possible path to anything that they can fly and start to get data on. And that, I know it's like a bit of a meme at this point, but the thing Elon said, if it's long, it's wrong. If it's tight, it's right. Like, as much as that is like kind of a funny joke, that is super true. At least in terms of anything that I've done as well. That's totally the right thing. So I've got some new projects. We can talk about this later, but I've got some a kind of ambitious new project that I'm working on. There's a test stand for it right back there. And just like my approach for the last few weeks on it has been like, great. Like what is the fastest route to start testing the components for this project? What is the fastest possible thing? Even if like, you know, I'm going to end up doing about a day of engineering that like gets thrown away later, that's fine. It's like, how do you get, so for them, I think, you know, finding out, just building the minimum viable prototype so they can find out if that belly flop to upright maneuver is going to work, if they can start figuring out, you know, are there simulations accurate for a body that size? Like, like you can't, I don't know, you get into like rigid body dynamics and like where those start to break down for something that's that big. And they already deal with that stuff on Falcon 9. But as an example, I think there's a lot of value in that approach too. It's cool to get things right every single time, and building everything in a clean room is great. But they also open themselves up to more risk. And I think it's cool that they're willing to do that, because there will probably be some accidents along the way, and they will probably look spectacular. But if they're willing to take on that PR hit, I think it's totally like, I see a lot of value in the just build it as fast as you can, so that we can start getting data. I think that's exactly the approach they're taking, is like literally, how can we test these systems with, because if you have, say you have a mountain of things to try to solve. If you try to solve them all at once and put all your eggs in that one basket, now you've spent maybe 2-3 years solving something ahead of time, building this really expensive prototype that's supposed to test everything perfectly. Whereas you could just be like you said, it might be thrown away. They might throw away a little bit of engineering time just on the one Starship Mark 1 and 2. Like, yeah, you know, RIP carbon fiber. Yeah. Right, exactly. But if it's quicker to actually get the data from building that thing, testing, flying, getting all the data back, and then get to the next step and another more advanced version with real-time data and real-time knowledge on how to run these systems, how to fuel up liquid methane, how to blah, 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 pressurize cryogenic methane, things like, whatever these things are. If it's easier to do that, like, that's absolutely the right path forward. And it's just unique. I don't think we've seen this approach since kind of the space race. It's a little bit of a Silicon Valley approach. And just to be clear, there are a lot of things that are problematic about that. And we kind of see those in some of the social media platforms now. But move fast, break things is a great mantra when you're starting to when you're early on, at least in development, is just like, you got to be thinking like week by week in terms of progress, not like where are we going to be next year?
Right.
It's like, what's the main constraint this week?
Yep. Solve one thing at a time, and then use that as your jumping off point to the next part.
There's some good stories about like they've had this approach for a long time. So there's some good stories about Falcon 1 and them being like half the SpaceX team being on the Kwajalein Atoll. Atoll. I have no idea how to pronounce that
just
either.
Quad,
it's like niche.
sure.
But there's some good stories about like, opting to pay tons of money to ship a part there because it can get there in a day rather than, or like fly a part there, even though it's incredibly expensive, because it's worth it to just not have that wait time for it to ship over on a boat. And there's also some good stories about forgetting to pressurize the first stage or something in flight in a plane.
And it started to like pop or something, like pressure started like break, and they just started hearing creaks and pings and pongs, and they're like, oh god.
And those are the cracks that like, if you're a much larger aerospace company and you have a more traditional approach of like, we're going to engineer the hell out of this thing, and then the first test article isn't going to show up for 5 years, like, you probably won't get those things because you'll have 10 people working on that problem. And so the move fast, break things approach that SpaceX takes, at least in early development, is great. Like, if you can afford to spend a little bit more in the short term, I think that's the way to do it. I don't know. Again, I build model rockets. Like,
well, have you done anything like that in your own model rocket development where you were totally over engineering an entire system, and then you're like, screw? Well, like, for instance, you were working on an RCS thing, and so just for those of you that don't follow Joe's work, he was working on little, basically cold gas thrusters at the tip of the rocket to be able to help steer it. And I think you ended up breaking that down into a lot smaller subsystems to test. It seemed like that was a really big, ambitious project at the beginning, and it looks from the outside, it looked like you ended up kind of chunking that down. Is that true?
The state of that project is a little weird. I'm working with a couple different companies now to see if we can source some proper valves for it. But actually, just to like, the state of that project is nightmare mode right now. There's so many systems that don't work. There are so many things that like I just can't get fixed. But yeah, that one.
Would you say this is was this your Starman hoodie of projects?
Oh hell yeah, yeah! It's the same thing. I don't know if you count that as a swear, but
no, you're good.
Anyway, yeah. So it's the same thing. It's like honestly, this happens with every project that anyone does, though, where it's like you kind of try to estimate how hard it's going to be, and you're always going to be wrong. And so I kind of thought, like, getting from nothing to a working prototype that works on the ground for a reaction control system is actually not that hard. But then like getting something that can properly fly, at some point it's like, oh, cool. This is why, real valve companies charge thousands of dollars for these components. It's because they're really hard to make. I don't know. That was a bit of a tangent, but to answer your question, at the beginning of that project, and actually at the beginning of the Thump Tube project too, I spent like a week and a half in CAD designing parts, computer-aided designing parts for the project, and about half of them never get used, or at least for those projects have never been used because I like move. Well, that's the thing, move fast, break things. So I don't know. Does this make sense at all?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Keep going. So in other words, like, you had engineered things that because you hadn't like tested them really before, you realized had you maybe done less of the work ahead of time and just kind of started testing things, maybe you would realize that you had totally over-engineered it and not had all this sunk cost engineering. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, kind of. I guess. See, now I don't know what point I'm trying to make. Mostly it's just like, I think it's easy to. I think it's easy to point out the flaws in retrospect, and it's really hard to find them before you start engineering. Yeah. So, okay, yeah, here it is. I found the point. I found it again. I lost it for a sec. So it's really easy to see those things in retrospect, but getting as fast as you can to a prototype that you can start actually testing and getting data back on is, at least for me, the most important part. So like getting the Thump tube built as quick as possible so I can realize, because at first I hadn't realized that, like, oh, it won't eject high enough out of the tube, or like something like that. That's at least been the most important part for me. And again, like if you have a legitimate engineering background, if you go to university for these types of things, you're probably going to have a background that allows you to anticipate a lot of that.
Right.
But I guess, so it mostly depends on, at least for me, not having a background in this and having to just experimentally figure out a lot of this stuff. And so getting to that prototype as fast as possible has been really important.
But I think that's almost some of the humility that we're seeing with the Starship program is that Elon said it a few times that it's taken them forever to frame the question even. You know, like, and the idea is like maybe if they start doing prototypes, doing smaller scale, cheaper, whatever things, it'll open up more questions so they know how to answer it, so they have a better perspective of the whole program and how to solve certain problems ahead of time, as opposed to like it's not an arrogance, because engineering is engineering. You know, there's answers, there's solved things, there's things that people have known for decades, you know, that especially in the 50s and 60s, the amount of things that NASA and NACA and the Air Force and all those people figured out is unbelievable, and those truths are still truths. But how you apply those physics to your iterative change and how you get there quickly and really solve the problem, I think is really interesting to see on the Starship program, because we're seeing it publicly. We're actually watching it happen. And some of that stuff might be behind closed doors, might be totally CAD, might be all these things that take 10 years, but we're seeing it like in real time, and it's just really weird.
Yeah. I always kind of wonder like what it feels like to be an employee who has a lot of their life end up on Twitter from people who are like, okay, Austin Barnard. We all know Austin Barnard at this point, like the legend down in Texas. But, I always feel like I wonder what it would be like to like work all day out on the Starhopper or something, and then come back and it's like, oh, cool, my work was documented. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's good and bad parts to it, but it also is just really hard to build a building that will fit that kind of thing. So building it out in the open seems like an inevitability. Yeah,
and when it's material like stainless steel, it doesn't matter as much as it would something like obviously carbon fiber or aluminum or something like that. But
I still kind of think the carbon fiber Mark 1 looks the best. Sorry, everyone.
Ooh, hot take. I have to admit, I was so nervous about carbon fiber.
Really?
Yeah, just because of how nasty it is. It's a material that's very, in cryogenic conditions, very unforgiving. Like, I'm very impressed with Rocket Lab's ability to use a linerless tank, advanced carbon composites. Like, that's impressive. And then trying to do that and be able to recover it, to me, always just seemed like I was just nervous. I don't know. Stainless steel, it just in my head, maybe it's totally like a mental thing when I think about stainless steel, because I've seen pictures of like a Centaur upper stage surviving re-entry and landing in one piece as a giant chunk of stainless steel.
I'm gonna need the source on that, because that sounds really cool.
Let me show you this. Delta stainless steel re-entry. But that's the thing, is like, at least it's here we go.
It does seem like with stainless steel, you can patch things up a lot better. And I feel like with carbon fiber, when one part is compromised, most of the part has to be scrapped.
Right. And
again, no material science background.
The failure rate. Like, look at this.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I think I have seen some of these too.
Yeah. I don't remember what exactly this is, but I just think that's like super fascinating. Orbital debris, blah, 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 of a Delta II launch vehicle. 200 stainless steel structures survive re-entry relatively intact from NASA.
Man.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Delta II.
R.I.P. of course. But I think that's half the point, is like, even without wanting to survive, it's still, it can survive mostly intact. And you just have a lot more leeway, and you don't need as big of heat shield. You don't need, it's not as critical. You could probably miss some heat shields. Like the space shuttle had, I don't know if you know about this one re-entry.
Yeah, I heard about this recently. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should go ahead and cover it for the people who don't.
It's basically one of the shuttles re-entered with a pretty big chunk of heat shield missing right almost on the nose. And luckily, right behind that piece was a hunk of steel in this one spot, because the airframe of the space shuttle was aluminum, which had a very low melting point, a lot lower, not a very low, but a lot lower melting point than stainless and then steel. And had that heat shield fallen off of like one heat shield in front of it or one behind it, it would have been probably detrimental. But luckily there was steel behind it, and it just kind of took the beating and was like, whatever, I'm steel, I don't care as much. You know, that's kind of half of it to me, is like at least knowing you might have to do some refurbishment, but you're probably going to get to the ground at least, you know? It might be bendy. Can you imagine it's just like melting? It's like a Terminator T-1000 style or whatever.
The biggest thing I'm excited to see is I'm sort of shifting the subject a little bit, but I live for the control stuff and that's what my whole channel is about basically. Yeah. But like the active control, active stability, and specifically thrust vector control, there's this crazy move that they're hoping to do when they belly flop in and flip over. And it's just like, man, the dynamics of like the slosh of the liquid inside there is going to be crazy. The bending, like the forces that you're putting at the bottom of the vehicle to flip it around so fast. I mean, okay, so the mass moment of inertia, like how much force it takes to turn something like that. I am curious how they're designing their way around that, so that an object that large, kicking it that hard and that fast in one direction is like, you have to like plan for that a lot. So anyway, I'm sure they have, like it's 8,000 employees or whatever of like, you know, brilliant engineers, but I'm just really excited to see like how that stuff pans out.
That's why when I asked him at the Q&A, like, are you really doing it this aggressively at first? Because it seems like, why wouldn't they do that like at 10,000, meters or something, and then just do like a slow propulsive landing? Like, practice that maneuver, make sure that maneuver works out, and have plenty of room to recover from it if it's not perfect. The way they're showing it in that demonstration is like literally at like 200 or 300 meters above the ground, doing the most insane like flip maneuver and having to just nail it on your first try. And that terrifies me.
Yeah, it seems also maybe uncomfortable for passengers. I am sure that obviously there's still a lot to figure out before we put any people on this type of thing, but it also seems like, I wonder what that feels like if you're riding in the ship.
Well, don't forget, at least for now, they're using the engines to kick and the cabin, is the kind of the fulcrum point, so it's not going to receive nearly as much of that big swing effect as the bottom. But once they get rid of the engines firing, it won't have to swing backwards. The whole reason that it swings beyond its 90-degree point is so that it cancels out the horizontal velocity of it kicking on those engines in the first place. He said later on they're going to go to a hot gas thruster using methane and oxygen, and that will be strong enough to be able to do the majority of that flip maneuver with the fins too. And hopefully those two things make it actually a smoother thing. But for now, they're just trying to solve it as is. I think here's my opinion. This is my hot take.
Hot take.
I don't know if they have much confidence that they're going to actually stick the landing on the first one. I think they just want to validate their control systems for that skydiver reentry. Which is why I also think they're going to I don't think they're going to land it back at the pad.
You think it's going to be on the ocean?
I do. I think so. Just because, like, why would they try to land that back at the pad? It's like this insane maneuver that you could wipe out your whole farm, like your whole Lox farm, all your tanks, all your infrastructure.
Okay, if we're gonna play the skeptical game, I have something to add to that, which is I do get a little bit worried about using LC-39A as a landing pad for that. And I just think about like the total mass of detonationable material at a really historic launch site, and I'm kind of like, could we possibly just like scoot it over a little further away? Like, I have faith in the engineering, and I'm sure it will work. But sometimes you want to make an omelet, you gotta break a few eggs.
Well, and I think from what I understand, the initial plans are at first Starship and Super Heavy won't land back at 39A yet.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think they are pouring a pad for Super Heavy to land next to the
right. So even just next to it is like, what's the blast radius on that?
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
So I hope that they do some LZ landings and some drone ship landings for a while, because I'd much rather see a drone ship sink But then again, that might be more expensive than refurbishing 39A.
Well,
Those drone ships aren't cheap.
how do you put a price on like ruining? I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm leaning too hard into the skeptic thing, but that's just such a special launch pad that I kind of feel like, oh man, can't we just build a new one like down the street a little bit?
Well, tell me what makes the pad the pad? Is it the structure? Is it the space shuttle like fixed service structure? Is that the pad? Is it the concrete? Is it the mound? What constitutes the pad, and what part of that are you worried about no longer existing if there were to be a RUD? Because I think the mound will be fine. The mound could handle a nuke hitting it.
Yeah.
You know, you might hurt some of the tower, but the tower doesn't look the same anymore. It's all cladded and SpaceX'd out. So that's no longer Space Shuttle. It's definitely not Apollo, because it wasn't Apollo.
Yeah, right.
So
I don't know. That's fair enough. It would be great to keep the explosions away from there. Maybe it's like maybe it's not about the actual structure. It's just like, I don't want to see explosions in that location.
Yeah, you don't want to see history flaming and one of your favorite, most hallowed grounds on Earth just scorching fire from hell, basically.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I have a lot of feelings that aren't exactly rational about it. So I have a lot of, just let's round it out so I don't get in trouble with anyone. I have a lot of faith in the engineering at SpaceX, and I think it's going to be awesome when that thing starts flying, especially out of LC-39A or Boca Chica. But yeah, I think it's just with any project. Like when Starhopper was beginning to be built, everyone was like, "Oh, look, they're building a water tower." Because like, there's no way they're building a rocket. So like, you know, I'm skeptical, and I think I'll probably be proved wrong.
And how many people were like, they can't land on those legs. Those legs don't have shock absorbers or anything. Like,
dude,
it will break. I mean, many comments.
I like the ones. I've seen probably over 10. I mean, they're gone now, but when they were trying to land on the drone ship and they kept missing it or they kept not doing it, and everyone was like, you obviously can't land. Like, it'll never work on the drone ship. And even if it does, it won't work reliably. And like, I don't know, man, apart from RIP, rip in peace, center core, it usually works.
Yeah. Almost didn't work for Tycom 8.
Yeah.
But even that made it home, though. You know, that should be an example of how reliable it is.
The bendy boy, the leaner?
Yes, leaning tower of Tycom. I don't know. Yeah, but that should be proof right there that like something like that, they obviously thought about that, because people be like, what about the waves? And it's so tall. And it's like, I'm sure they know the center of gravity.
I feel like they know about how waves work.
I'm sure they can figure out how big the pitch on the deck will be and the roll and everything like that and calculate it. Like, I don't have those numbers, so I'm not going to question it. I'm sure they've thought of it, though. Thank you, Internet.
Yeah.
I do love when you see people ask that question. Have you guys thought about? Have you ever seen that? Have you ever thought about? I'm sure you get that.
I get it. I get it on my channel too, because my it's like the you have a term for it. It's not a whataboutism. It's a
why don't they just?
Why don't they? Hashtag why don't they just?
Yeah.
And for my channel, it's like, why don't you just land on concrete? Because it'll bounce when it hits the ground. At least when I try to land a model rocket, and everyone's like, why don't you just land on concrete? And it's like, listen, man, I don't know. Everyone is an engineer till the numbers show up. Or I don't know how to say it, but it's really easy to be an engineer in the YouTube comment section.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people don't think about the logistics of, like, you don't want to fly that near places of people. You want to, like, abide by all of the rules of model rocketry and blah, blah, blah. Like, there's so many extra considerations that people just don't think about, you know? Or they don't care about, you know?
Yeah.
It's context.
Or like, you know, it's YouTube. It's like, it's all garbage.
Right. Well,
I don't know.
And I keep saying it's weird to me that we're living in an era where, no offense to a 13-year-old, because there's plenty of smart 13-year-olds that'll grow up to be engineers themselves, which is great. That's the cool thing about YouTube is that 13-year-olds can gain knowledge and all this stuff as much as anybody.
I was an idiot at 13.
But I was I didn't even know remotely how little I knew at the age of 13. And a 13-year-old can have the exact same voice on YouTube as a PhD candidate that's been studying something like, enthalpy in blah, blah, blah for 20 years. And the kid will be like, this will never work, blah, 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 and have as much authority on the subject in the comment section as someone with a freaking PhD. And we've just never had that in our social lives ever before.
Dude, so we're both self-taught, which means we both had wacky ideas about rockets for a little while before we actually knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. And one thing that is at least fun to share for me, because I don't think it now, is when I was getting started in 4 years ago or something, I thought that the reason, and this is after I had considered applying to SpaceX, after, with this mindset, I thought that the reason that rockets moved up, that they could ascend, is because the fire below is hot and heat rises, and that's it. That's what I thought. So
wow.
I don't know. I just and that, I don't know. I was 22 or something like that. Right. So even when you're older,
without studying or knowing the answer, I mean, that is a reasonable thing to think without knowing the context and knowing the whole story. I mean, we can laugh about it now, but I'm sure we've all had ridiculous thoughts like that.
Yeah.
And we probably have made comments on YouTube and that's the whole bane of flat earth and all that stuff, is then people have that and they never actually learn the answer, and they think well, obviously heat doesn't rise in space, so how do rockets work?
There's do you know that channel It's Okay to Be Smart? His name's Joe Hansen or something. I should know his name since I share it with him. But he had a great tweet the other day that it was a shot of a YouTube comment, and it was all caps, and it started with "I'm not a scientist, but," and then just a bunch of wrong stuff. I don't know. We can't hate too much on YouTube too, because it's what makes both of us actually have a living. So
for sure,
I can't hate too much.
No. And I think everyone's very aware of the problems of YouTube. But that's also the beauty of it. Like I said, the fact that a 13-year-old can comment is okay, sure, whatever. That's what it is. But the fact that same 13-year-old can learn and actually be inspired to, pursue things even if it's not a traditional route, even if they aren't, capable of going to college or whatever, and pursuing an engineering degree. Look at you. I mean, they can learn how to make their own freaking model rockets that fly themselves and steer and do unbelievable things, just from basically YouTube and the internet.
Yeah, man. There's so much that's good about it too. I really think it balances out a little bit. There's I still okay, so you and I both do video editing, and in any given week I'm dealing with 4 or 5 problems with Adobe Premiere, of just bugs and stuff like that. And YouTube, for people, people who end up making tutorials on stuff, it's incredible how much people are just willing to donate their own time and share knowledge that they've learned. And it's crazy. I have a video that I think I mentioned it before, but I'm trying to get it out pretty soon. And I need to do some animation. And I've never animated anything in my life apart from some stop motion stuff. And I just have confidence that I can go into YouTube and I can type in how to animate in Adobe Illustrator, and in 2 or 3 hours I'll feel like I have a good idea of how to do it. And it's all free.
Yep.
What is that?
Yeah, it's incredible. It really, really is, and it's socially a huge game changer, I think. I mean, again, we would have had to go to school for that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, just for that.
For sure.
Just for that. And you would have been pretty much stuck in that path to only do animations. You wouldn't have too many opportunities to have time to pursue, I don't know, music, rockets, other things. So that's what's so cool about this era we're in, is you can learn all the things you want, and as deep as you want or as little as you want.
Yeah. And I even think you kind of could learn those things a while ago. You go to the library, there's a lot of resources and books and things like that. But having it, YouTube and the internet lowers the barrier. I mean, so there's essentially no barrier. If you have time, you can learn. That's it. You don't have to have money. You don't have to have any crazy equipment. If you have an internet connection and a phone, you're good.
Yeah.
I actually have. Nope, can't talk about that yet. Never mind. Wait, is my camera still going?
It's funny. Your camera actually just died, so it really seems like you just redacted some information. And,
no.
And you're very classified. Did your camera die?
No, it's still going. Hold on. Let's see if I can.
While you troubleshoot, I'm gonna.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, never mind.
What I was gonna say, so I don't seem too sketchy, is I have a contest coming up that has to do with learning things online. That's all I'll say. I can talk more off the air.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Since there's still those other guys on the show that are probably gonna be talking, I do want to kind of start to wrap things up, but I did want some hot takes with Joe Barnard. Number one, what are you looking most forward to for the end of the year? Is there any spaceflight event, anything personally, anything in the rest of 2019? We have just under 3 months left of the year. What are you most looking forward to?
I want that in-flight abort. I want it so bad, Tim. I want it so bad. I want to see that booster explode from the det cord. And it's a little bit of like the pyromaniac in me. I want to see the Crew Dragon in-flight abort so bad.
I forget, do we know for sure? Are they actually going to do a full detonation of the booster?
I want them to. And I feel like as someone who builds model rockets and not a whole lot else, I feel like I should have the authority to direct 8,000 employees to do that.
7,000.
No, I think, okay, yeah, the IFA stuff is going to be awesome, regardless of whether they blow up the booster or if it just rips apart because they're doing it at like above Mach or something. But that's going to be really cool. I do really want to see Starliner fly too, because it looks weirdly like more unstable than a regular Atlas booster. I actually got to chat with someone at ULA a couple of days ago who talked about the GNC stuff on the Atlas booster. And he pointed out something that I thought was really interesting, and it's that it's way easier for them to do control when there are strap-on boosters there, because they kind of act like fins.
Really?
Which is interesting. Okay, yeah, what else is coming up in 2019? Rocket Lab continues to just crush it. It is so, it's like, there's so many cool things that they're doing, and I just generally seeing them continue to have success in their launches and put their logo everywhere. It's great. I really like Rocket Lab.
I would double down on that and say when we finally get to see the hardware for their Block 10 or their 10th booster that's going to have recoverability hardware, I can't wait to nerd out over what that is, because it's going to have some stuff. I don't know what exactly that stuff is, but there's going to be some stuff.
I'm stoked to see that too. I just love how tiny it is too. I love how small that booster is, and it's like the little booster that could.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And then what else? What else do we have like coming up in 2019?
Those are and maybe a Starship 20-kilometer hop in 2019.
If that happens, man, yeah, that would be great. Man, it's so big. I can't even wrap my head around it right now.
Yeah.
And then in 2020, what are we doing in 2020?
That's what I was going to say next. Is what are you most looking forward to in 2020? I'm definitely going to say Commercial Crew.
Yeah.
Because it's about freaking time that the United States, after 9 years it'll be, starts sending people back up to the International Space Station from U.S. soil. And it's not a Russia versus the United States thing. It's just like this should have been. We never should have had a gap where we don't have multiple options of getting people to the International Space Station. So
this is a capability that's just badly needed no matter what.
Yes. Right. It has nothing to do with being boohoo Russia. No, thank God Russia's still doing what they're doing, because otherwise we wouldn't have any way to get up there. So yeah,
I think the thing that I'm excited to see mostly I don't think anything else is going to happen in 2019, maybe, but probably not. In 2020, I feel like if you're an orbital launch startup and you are not launching in 2020, it's like, I just feel like the market, you're going to miss the train.
You think that's
or at least mostly it's just, I really want to see more rockets flying. So I kind of think, I have no insider information on this, but I kind of feel like maybe Virgin Orbit could make an attempt this year. That could happen. That would be cool. And then I wish, I don't know what's going on with Vector. It seems like maybe no Moss, but
little confusing there.
Firefly is moving surprisingly fast too.
Yeah.
They just did a 4-engine test, and it'll be cool to see what they've got going on. And then who else is coming up? There's that super secretive company in San Francisco, Astra.
Yeah.
They've had a couple launches. We just have not seen any of it.
Really? I didn't realize they did any launches at all. I knew they've done some testing and stuff.
Failed not too far above the pad.
Maybe that's why we didn't see anything from it. Well, then there's like almost the Electron Junior that's like, you know, have you seen that? Like almost a copy of the Electron that's supposed to be launching out of Scotland or England or something.
Oh no, I haven't seen that. Who is that? Is that
I don't remember.
There's a couple European companies. There's PLD Space. There's Orbex, I think, is a company that's making some good progress.
I think that's who it is. Maybe. Who is this? Largest blah blah blah. Orbex, Orbex. Yeah, that's who I was thinking. And that's, to me, it's basically like I'm not going to say a ripoff because all rockets are ripoffs of something else, but it is very, very familiar to the Electron with, you know, electric pumps and everything, and carbon fiber construction. Seems like the 21st century thing to do. Yeah, it's super cool, and I'm excited for that one for sure. Even just having another country open up access to space is super, super cool. Mm-hmm. Okay, but what about for yourself? What's your goal for 2020?
Dude, so I have worked at... Okay, here's what's going on. This test stand behind me is to start working out a... How do I introduce this? There's a vehicle called Sprite that I'm building. It's going to be, I don't know, this-ish big. It looks like a big 3-dimensional X made out of carbon fiber rods. All of the parts are here. Like, it's ready to go. Okay. There are a bunch of carbon fiber rods that basically act as a roll cage. And if you know, you're familiar with Maston, right? And so they have these liquid bipropellant lander vehicles that they test guidance and control on. Yeah. That's my goal, but I don't currently have the knowledge or the experience to safely build a bipropellant liquid engine myself. It's good to be like aware of where your knowledge gaps are, and it's not going to be good. I also, like, it costs a lot of money to do that. But yeah. So what I'm doing is it is an electric ducted fan powered lander. It uses gimbaling, or not gimbaling. It uses thrust vanes to steer. And then I'm actually working with our good friend, the rocket god himself, Charlie Garcia, to design a proper afterburner for it. Wow. Because, like, it's not a rocket if you don't have flame. Yeah. Yeah. So, but the point is, this is all to say, the point of that is I need to start getting into longer flight times and real guidance and navigation. My goal is, I don't know, it's always a little scary to, like, throw your hat over the fence. It would be really cool to, in my lifetime, try to lead a team to, like, put something on the moon. Wow. And so just starting to get more familiar with more advanced guidance and control, more advanced navigation stuff, picking out landing sites from the air, and then going for them from there. I mean, there's all sorts of papers that are publicly available on G-fold. You know what that is? That's the, you know, that's one flavor at least of a way you can land from the air. And I just think, like, I have this crazy opportunity where all I have to do is document what I do on YouTube. And I have my job is, like, to experiment with stuff. And it's hard to not get really excited about it. It just, like, I have this crazy opportunity where that kind of seems like in like a couple years down the road, that might be a thing I could do. So my goal this year and next year is to start really working towards that and seeing, like, all right, what does the roadmap for that look like? Wow. Yeah.
Dude, that's... Yeah, I love it. I love it. So I mean, that's, to me, like, okay, for those of you that don't watch Joe on YouTube, I think that's like the coolest thing about it is we get to watch you learn and experiment in real time. And it's unique. You're almost doing what SpaceX has been doing for the past year or two, which is basically Elon on Twitter giving us all this cool knowledge about what they're doing behind the scenes. you're doing it in really well-produced YouTube videos that narrate and actually give us the true insight to what your decisions were, your challenges, and all that stuff. And that's a treat. Like, that is the ultimate treat.
Here's the thing, too. It's fun to be like, oh, yeah, it's just me. I'm just working as hard as I can and trying to learn everything I can. But it's not just me. Like, everyone who watches my YouTube videos, most of them are engineers already. Mm-hmm. Some of them work in the real space industry. Some of them really have the answers to these things. And so, like, I know we spent some time, like, kind of beefing about YouTube comments and stuff like that. But for real, it is incredibly helpful to have feedback like that from people. You know, I've got the Discord too. There's a bunch of people in there. And it's like, it's incredibly helpful to have that feedback. So I am learning in real time, but a lot of it is through the generosity of people who take their time to hop in the comments and be like, hey man, have you thought about using state space feedback control instead of tracking a direct set point? And it's like, oh wow, let me buy these books. Let me learn these things. So instead of,
it's kind of like a necessary evil of like, the YouTube comments are the best and the worst thing ever, because
if you can tolerate the people who just have a bad day in the comment section, then there's a lot of value. Yeah.
I think the weight is on us as commenters too. Any person that's listening to this, if you comment on YouTube videos, take a deep breath first and make sure that the person that might be reading it may have had a terrible day too, and just make sure that you're like, hey, I want to help, and maybe this will help you a little bit. Here's my thoughts. Thanks for a great video. Something like that. Even just because the tone, we can read it so wrong as YouTubers. So crowdsourcing the information.
If you can tolerate the guy who shows up to your rocket video to tell you your jeans are too tight and nothing else, if you can tolerate those people, there's a lot of value in the YouTube comment section.
Exactly. Dude, it's so weird to me where people, Anyway, that's true, though. The crowdsourcing of information, the crowdsourcing of inspiration and ideas. And for me, like, I get so many future video ideas based on the questions people have from previous videos. You know, I'll do a video and if I see 20 questions of the same thing, I'm like, well, obviously that's a good topic to have because it's a topic that's coming up over and over. So clearly that's what I should do. But that's super cool. So we might start seeing some more advanced landers in the next.
It's just gonna be a little weird for a few months. That's the warning I'll give. It just is like, it's kind of gonna look like I'm building a drone for a bit. I don't know. I really need to do a video where I explain all of this at once. But I've been actually, at your advice, I've been doing something that has been really helpful for me, which is like, you know what? I don't need to post every week. And it has really been good for my productivity and for like my own mental health to just, I'm going to put out updates when they're ready and when it's time. And so we're almost there. The next video will be about this test stand, and there's going to be a lot of details there. But yeah, for the next few months, it's going to look like, what is he doing? Why is this not a rocket? But it will make sense later on.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because you're even in a greater position where you're engineering and building things and working on things that might have problems spark up, where a weekly upload schedule or something that, like, the weird pressure that people got used to. I think that was the Nobel or the idea 2-3 years ago. No matter what, was like, if you're going to be doing YouTube, you have to make a video once a week, period. You know, there's an upload schedule and you have to stick to that. And it doesn't work for someone like you. It doesn't really work for someone like me that has to do research for a long time. And I don't know how long it's going to take for me to learn how an aerospike works inside and out. It might not work every week for you, who's trying to physically build something that might crumble and break, blah, 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 or like Rich rebuilds, stuff like that.
I never have problems with any of my designs. I just never have problems,
They're perfect from the day they're conceived.
I don't have like one full week where I'm troubleshooting one specific bug and then it turns out I missed a semicolon. Like, I don't have it. And like, Tim, why can't you just make the hour-long aerospike video in a week? I don't get it. All the information's there.
It's all out there. Why are you sleeping? I'm not. Well, Joe, I'm so excited for everything you're working on. I mean, you're one of my favorite people to watch on YouTube. You're also one of my favorite people to interact with on Twitter. Where do people find you online? What are all your handles?
The best place is probably the YouTube channel right now, or Twitter at Joe Barnard, or at BPS_space on Twitter. We can toss some links in the description. But yeah, those are the two places that I'm active the most. I should really be less active on Twitter, but it's the reality. Yeah, those are the two best places for me. And then we do have a website, and it's just the company name, so bps.space.
Cool. All right, Joe. Well, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to hang out with me. I'm so glad we got to talk about all the exciting things coming up, and best of luck with all your future endeavors.
Sweet. Thanks a bunch, Tim. You as well.
Yeah. All right. Later.
All right, see ya.
All right, guys. Welcome back. And we're going to wrap up here with a Why Don't They Just for Joe. This is, Is this the first Why Don't They Just for Joe? I think it might be.
Usually we just let Tim handle this. and he's basically, it shouldn't be called Why Don't They Just, it's just how much smarter is Tim than the other two yahoos.
That's right. So this is Don Barbone on Twitter asks, why don't they just pull CO2 out of the Earth's atmosphere, create CH40, also known as methane, and use it in a methane-powered car? Wouldn't that be CO2 neutral / sustainable / renewable? Thinking face.
So methane-powered car, that's just natural gas, right? Like a natural gas-powered bus or something like that, right? I mean, those do exist.
Yeah, Honda even makes one. Honda has a Honda Civic that's a natural gas vehicle.
Yeah. And I'm assuming they get a bit more fuel efficiency out of that. And I know the natural gas is supposed to burn cleaner than petroleum-based fuels.
Yeah. So the only data point or reference point I have there is that I believe like a natural gas peaker plant for energy is something like 40% cleaner than coal. So this is where it's the hey, that's good, but it still sucks kind of thing. It's like good, but not great, you know?
Yeah. Well, to answer the why don't they just, they just are. Is that how you answer that? No, that's what you're talking about is basically direct air capture, or DAC. And there's a few companies that are working on that. This is actually a subject that I'm really interested in. I probably will cover a bit more in the channel going forward. I think there's a lot of people that don't like this idea because they feel like it kind of gives cover to fossil fuel companies to keep burning fossil fuels because like you can just take it right out of the air, so keep burning fossil fuels, you know? I feel like that's sort of the same argument being made against like giving girls the HPV vaccine because the people say it would give them it would encourage them to have premature sex or whatever, you know? Like I think it's the same kind of argument, so I'm not really on board with it.
I think from an economist point of view, they call that induced demand. It's like you add a lane on the freeway, and then more people take the freeway as a result, and you're like, great.
Yeah.
And you just, you know.
On one hand, I do get that argument, but I also think that we've just reached a point where we're just going to have to, at some point, somehow pull this carbon out of the air. Planting trees helps, obviously, and there's a lot of people that kind of go down that route. But the thing about direct air capture, and there's a couple of different companies that are working on this. There's Carbon Engineering out of British Columbia. There's Climeworks out of Switzerland, I believe. I think they're set up in Iceland as well. But anyway, but that's what they're doing is they're pulling CO2 out of the air and they're creating fuel out of it. I know one of them is working on like jet fuel for airplanes and stuff. And I think I understand that a little bit more because you can create an electric car. We're not there with airplanes. You can't really create an electric airplane.
We're almost there.
Can almost there, but it's still there. Like, are you going to create a 787 Dreamliner with electric? No. Yeah,
they're the small. But I mean, did you see it was a French company? I believe they made one that can go 300 kilometers. And it was like autonomous, whatever, electric. I don't know. Yeah. There's a real problem there with batteries being really heavy and not having a lot of energy relative to, say, jet fuel.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm positive on the direct air capture thing. I especially like the idea, I've talked about it before, the Carbon X Prize, where they're talking about finding uses for CO2 and creating a market around that so that people would be incentivized to capture the CO2 out of the air. But one of those implementations is to create natural gas out of it. So, I mean, it is a burgeoning thing, but it's kind of a thing. It's happening right now.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, we can talk about the should of, we should, do this and do that. But really, like, we're kind of beyond that point. Probably it seems. It seems like we don't have the luxury of, like if we really wanted to do that, we should have started 40 years ago. And it's just at this point, like the whole Bill Gates arguing for nuclear thing. He's like, look, I'm sorry, we just don't have a choice anymore. Like, sure, it'd be great to not have to do this, but we have to. You know, it's just not
and we didn't talk too much about that. We kind of jumped over it, but the whole TerraPower thing is called the traveling wave reactor is what it's called. And what's super interesting about it, first of all, they make the point in this Bill Gates documentary that the Chernobyl plant that went down in the 80s was made with like 1940s technology. And most of the power plants that are up today are made out of like 1970s technology. So there's a lot of new ideas, the traveling wave reactor being one of them, thorium being one of them. There's all kinds of them, but there's newer, better, safer, more efficient nuclear ideas out there that are not really being explored right now, not on a vast scale or anything. And TerraPower is one of them. The traveling wave reactor is one of them. The traveling wave reactor doesn't have to get refilled for 10 years. It works for an entire decade before you have to put more fuel in it. And it doesn't have to be the highly enriched uranium. It can be low enriched uranium.
Well, in fact,
if I'm wrong.
It's discarded uranium, I thought, right? I believe they actually take nuclear waste.
Yeah, I was about to go there. Yeah, like this is one of them. There's some other ideas that basically take the nuclear waste that's been created and gives it a second life, basically. And so, no, I mean, these are things we need to be getting serious about and looking into, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, and it doesn't get hot. Was that the deal, or like there was something about it, right? That it didn't ever would never.
It literally, it can't melt down.
Right.
Like if all the power gets shut off to the plant, it just will stop reacting.
Yeah,
it won't the thing about normal what we use now, the nuclear reactors, is they have to be cooled constantly, and if they aren't, then that's what caused Chernobyl to blow up, was the water around it that was keeping it cool overheated and boiled and evaporated, and the pressure built up and it exploded. Traveling wave reactors and a lot of these newer designs, they just have like a freeze plug that just dumps everything out, and it just stops working.
Yeah.
In that situation.
Yeah, I really hope we get to. I mean, all the stuff that Bill Gates talked about in that documentary there. I mean, they're all like amazing. Yeah, I think I had it up a second ago. It's something like 2,900 kids a day die from diarrhea. And it's something like malaria, AIDS, measles, blah, blah, blah. Like all of that stuff combined is not as bad as diarrhea. And it's all based on basically fecal matter and not having – it's not about just clean water is the deal. It's all the other stuff, the pathogens and stuff in human waste that get back into the body that cause those problems. You're just like, God, like, yeah, it's a real thing, man. I mean, you know, I'm super thankful that we have someone like Bill Gates that you know, cares enough to even try. You know, obviously he has the money to help, but even more than that, just the brain juice to actually put, you know, because I think, you know, maybe it's here in the U.S. anyways, I feel like it's our culture that's basically evolved to serve our self-interest for the most part, where you're brought up thinking, well, you know, your goal is to, like, you know, maybe work at a company and, you know, have a family and then, you know, send your kids to college or start a company. And as a owner of the company, your goal is just to make money. Your goal isn't to help the world, because that's not profitable. Yeah. And so, you know, I think Bill Gates realizes that, and that's where a lot of these things are. Like, we have to make it an economic reality that people will want to do this, because if you don't do that, then forget it. You know, this is why I'm so hyped on electric cars I'll just say Teslas for now. But eventually other electric cars, is that it's just a flat out economic benefit. It's better in literally every way. So you look at it and you go, great. Like, that's the only way I think these things really succeed, is when it's not a regulation forcing somebody to do something. It's not a guilty, like, oh, you're a terrible person or company kind of a thing. And there definitely are lots of terrible people and companies out there. Like, that's not letting them off the hook at all. But I think you just have to literally make it a better choice. that is objective. And, and once you do that, I think people, it's, kind of natural. It's like build it and they will come kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, kind of what we were talking about earlier. Like I think regulation is like the last resort to go to force like the kind of change that is required. And I get it might come to the point where you just have to do it, but I would much rather pull than push. I would much rather there be, like I was talking about the direct air capture, like economic incentives to do that. Like right now, coal plants, they can collect the CO2 as it comes out of their stacks, but that costs a lot of money, and that money is going to get passed on to consumers and everything. But if they could collect that CO2 and sell it, then they'd be crazy not to do that. That's just extra money that they could be making, and then it's keeping that from going into the atmosphere. It's a win-win.
Well, isn't that how gasoline was invented to begin with? It was a byproduct of some kind of oil manufacturing thing, or what? No, sorry, I think I have it wrong. I think this is how plastic was created, because plastic is.
I know that's how Vaseline was created.
Well, there you go. Yeah, but it was, man. I've got all the names and dates wrong, but essentially, like they were doing something with oil, and there was a byproduct, and they're like, man, we're just wasting all these resources, and so then they found something to do with them. And I think it was plastic is what was created out of it. And then since then, it's like it's been very hard to find a replacement for how good of a use case plastic was. So you're like, yeah, plastic's bad, but you're like, what else do you got? And the whole point of it was to not waste. So it's like a weird, like they just it's all driven by economics in my view. Maybe I'm just tunnel vision, but.
I was watching this period piece the other day, and it just suddenly hit me, like, how difficult would it be for a prop master and a set builder and a art director? Like, just how difficult would it be to do something set around 1900 with nothing plastic?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just think about how much plastic is around you right now.
Yeah.
And like, there wasn't any back then. And, like, you would have to create this world that doesn't have any plastic. Like that would actually be difficult now.
Yeah. Let me see. Yeah, 1907, Leo Hendrick invented plastic. Yeah. Crazy.
And then the movie The Graduate made it popular.
With
you
Dustin
haven't
Hoffman?
Seen that movie, have you?
No, I haven't. But is that the one where he sleeps with the mom and the daughter?
Yeah. But he just graduated from college, and I think they're throwing a graduation party for him. There's all these older people, and there's this one guy that just over and over again is like, one word, plastics. Because this was the 60s, and that was like new, still kind of a new, big, growing industry. But
yeah, man.
Like today you might say carbon nanotubes.
Graphene.
Right.
Speaking of period pieces, what are you working on there, Joe?
What period are you working on to whatever. So the Monday's video, which I'm going to be recording as soon as we get off of here, it's going to be about the nuclear propulsion thing, which I talked about with Andy in my interview with Andy Weir. I call him Andy. And it was something that first came up when I first did my Mars video way back when, and people were like, oh, you got to look into nuclear propulsion. I hadn't really, and then I looked into it and I was like, ooh, this needs a whole video. And I actually teased it in Monday's video that I might do a full video on nuclear, and now I'm doing it literally a week later. So
nice.
So yeah, it's a more efficient way of getting around the solar system.
So the idea here is that you launch a vehicle up and it has a nuclear reactor on it, and that nuclear reactor, does it spin a turbine still, or does it just, instead of spinning that turbine, shoot out whatever chemical it has as a propulsion itself?
The actual chemical is hydrogen, so it's like liquid hydrogen, which I guess would be lighter than the fuels that we use now. But anyway, no, it basically it heats up to like a third the surface of the sun, so it gets really hot. So that's one of the challenges. But it heats up this hydrogen to extreme temperatures, and then it just goes out the back end. And we talk a little bit about specific impulse, which Tim is the master of understanding all that. But like the Raptor engine right now has a specific impulse of like 350, 330, something like that. This would have like almost 900.
Oh, wow.
In terms of like just being able to burn and burn and burn, and you could get up to really, really fast speeds.
They've gone plaid.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm literally like, I don't know, days away from going on paternity leave. I have that series lined up, but I'm going to try to film a video here once we're done about Rivian, because I just, like, they had that order from Amazon for 100,000 vans, which wasn't even a product they had talked about previously. And I've just got a lot of people asking me about it. And so I started to look into it more, and it's really interesting, the history of the company and how they've evolved. So I don't know what to really, like how to frame it. I just kind of want to talk about them. And so that's where I'm headed with that. So we'll see. I mean, who knows? I may get a call here in 10 minutes and say, nope, yep, not filming that. So
yeah.
So next week's video is a surprise.
Yeah, even to you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm always blown away to find out that Rivian's been around for longer than Tesla, right? Like they've been around for like
2009
15 years or something.
2009. Yeah. I think it was like literally. I mean, it was very close to
about the same time.
Yeah, about the same time as Tesla was founded. But and they originally weren't focused on trucks or any of that stuff. So it's kind of like, and it wasn't called Rivian either. So it's just kind of a wild thing. Like a lot of what's really happened with Rivian seems to have happened in the last like 3 years. Is where the big majority, they got like some big investments, they got the factory, they've got just like a lot of these things, just kind of like, the chips are just falling right now in their favor. And so, and it's cool. I do wonder that we have in tech, there's kind of a funny saying about startups, and they say, a startup is more likely to drown from too many resources than to starve from not enough. And the idea being that, let's say you have a startup, right? Let's say I made, I don't know, a new widget for my phone or something. And it's like, cool, yeah, I got this great idea. And, I got this huge VC funding, $500 million. Like, yeah, go do it. And then I just start, really exploding the growth of the company and adding all these things. I could easily get way ahead of myself and then just completely flop and the business goes out. Versus, hey, we'll give you like a little bit of money, but you're going to have to get creative on how to keep your business afloat. And because those lessons you would learn in that process of becoming kind of really scrappy and innovative will help you actually, sustain in the long haul. So it's kind of the notion there. I don't know where Rivian falls on that. I think they're at 1.5 billion in VC money now. So they've got a healthy amount of cash. Now, granted, they're in a very capital intensive business. So, it's not like a company that makes an app got 1.5 billion. It's like, they need a factory and they need batteries and they need engineers and et cetera, et cetera. So I reached out to them to see if they'd give me an update on any of these things. I've worked with their press team in the past, so maybe I'll have some new info to pass along. I don't know, but stay tuned.
Well, I think it's actually kind of fitting that Jeff Bezos has gotten involved with them.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, I see correlations there between the way SpaceX and Blue Origin, like SpaceX just kind of like go in the public eye and everything, and Blue Origin's in stealth mode for like 15 years or something. And then, they still haven't really come out with anything that's made a difference yet, but they're in stealth mode that whole time. And Rivian feels like they were kind of in stealth mode for the whole time that Tesla was doing their thing, and maybe now they're kind of starting to. Yeah,
they still kind of are, right? So the I'll give away the ending of the video or the thoughts I had. I kind of had two big hurdles that they've yet to figure out. One is charging, and they're going to use CCS charge ports. So yes, technically they can go on Electrify America, Electrify Canada, blah blah blah, all those ones. But still, none of those are nearly as robust as plentiful as the supercharger network. So charging, and them being like the adventure vehicles where you go out and you're like gone way out in the wilderness, like, dude, you're gonna really have to figure that out. Like the nature of your product strategy requires this, and so to me that's a big gap right now. And then the other one is that despite them having a really solid team and technically owning a factory in Illinois, they've yet, from what I've seen, to even produce a prototype vehicle from the manufacturing facility, right? They have a couple of them out there, like for press tours and stuff, but they haven't actually made one from an actual manufacturing line yet. And meanwhile, while all this is happening, Tesla literally built a factory from a dirt field, and now it's making cars. So I'm looking at it going, guys, like, so. I think both of those are solvable, but there's definitely like some really big questions still to be answered on as to whether or not they will succeed and kind of make it. But with with Bezos and Ford, and now I think it's like Cox trucking company or something like that is backing them. I mean, they've got a lot of momentum, and I hope they can use that energy and steer it in the right direction to succeed, because I think it'd be awesome. I mean, I would love to own one of their vehicles. It sounds like an easier buy than the Tesla truck at this point, to be honest. Now, we haven't seen the Tesla truck, but everything Elon's talked about, it basically like he's kind of anti-selling it,
Yeah.
So.
And hopefully we'll see that by the end of the year, maybe?
I hope so, man. I think it's next month is somewhat officially. I don't know, but yeah. So that's it.
Well, cool. I think that's it.
We'll see you in our
ludicrous
future.
I'm not Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you like what we do and you want to kind of help get it out there, you can give us a nice review on any of your podcast streaming platforms, whichever one you use. That kind of helps get it out there. Also, we do have a Patreon set up, so you can join us there at patreon.com/ourludicrousfuture. You can get your name in the credits, meet a whole other group of like-minded people. It's a lot of fun. We do appreciate it. We'll see you there.